I'll just wait a half minute here. Councillor Tooley just texted me that he's having trouble connecting. I'll just wait for about 30 seconds and I'll start. Welcome to the City of Warman Committee of the Whole for March 15th, Monday, March 15th at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Good afternoon to everyone, and a sunny day today. And we'll start by calling the meeting to order and looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Seed.
I'll make the motion to approve the Committee of the Whole agenda for Monday, March 15, 2021 as presented.
Seconder. Councillor Johnson. Any additions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Carried. We'll move down to our administrator reports. It's a busy meeting as usual, and we'll start with our city manager.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. I just have a couple of informational items for this afternoon. One of them with the passing of the 2021 budget on January 25th. The managers have been busy, as you have seen, tendering for their equipment and projects for implementation this year. Also, the assessment notices have gone out with the 2021 revaluation numbers, which has prompted an increase in calls from the public to the office, with most of the inquiries are about their assessment going down and will the taxes go down. Overall, in total assessment, we saw just a small decrease of 2%. However, a shift of assessment between property classes, with multi-unit going down 8% and residential 2%, and commercial was up 5%, and that includes the change to the percentage of value. The Ministry of Government Relations determines the percentage of value, which purpose is to help adjust or during a revaluation process, mitigate some of the shifts that we would see in between the property classes. So this year, there's only one change, and that was to commercial, and that changed from a 100% to 85%. Also in early March, the city was approached by Saskatchewan Health Authority to inquire if the city would have any facilities available that would be used for both the drive-through and the mass walk-in vaccination centers. We looked at 2 facilities in which the city owned, as well as provided contact information from private facility landlords as well. SHA is looking at running these vaccination sites 7 days a week and approximately 12 hours a day, and starting on April 1st is what we've been advised. We haven't formally been advised of any location as of yet, but we're hoping that we will find that out sometime this week. As weather gets warmer and people start looking forward to the spring events such as the garage sales, we do get inquiries from the public as to the health guidelines. And so in speaking with public health, these guidelines haven't changed from those that were implemented in June of last year. So they'll remain in effect. So if anybody's looking for guidelines, they are on the provincial government site. On March 11th, myself and our planning manager met with the principals of the Tradition School to discuss some alternatives to try to alleviate some of the traffic congestion in front of the school. We had a good discussion with them, and the 2 principals that we spoke to advised that they would like to have some time to review some of the suggestions and also provide some comments of their own. So we'll continue to work with them and have a conversation over that as well. And then I do wish to take this opportunity to thank our finance manager, Amanda Rosenthal-Ebert, for putting together the 10-year capital plan. And, you know, you look at the document and it's, few pages long, quite a few totals and projects and purchase of equipment, and trying to get all that together, and dealing with the senior managers that each need a specific amount of funding to get their projects across. It's a lot of work, and I just wanted to recognize Amanda for that. You look at a few pages and you figure, okay, now we got our 10-year capital plan, but there's a significant amount of work behind that, and I just wanted council to be aware of that. And that's my report, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any questions for our city manager? I just want to make one comment then about working with the schools. That is excellent. It's when you're working with the schools, you get you and Brad working with the principals there, because they get frontline, they get all the complaints coming through them, but they're also the problem solvers. They have to deal with it on a regular basis and provide the staffing or the parent volunteers that make it all work. So when you're all working together, it's most likely to be solved then if it comes from elected officials from their side or our side. So appreciate that a lot. That's the way to get to a solution for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, we'll move down then. Thank you, City Manager Smith. We'll move to our Finance Manager, Manager Rosenthal Hebert.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. The first item I have for your consideration today is a 10-year capital plan. Administration has prepared a 10-year capital plan completed with plan funding, as you can see in Appendix A. It is important to note that in order to maintain current service levels, an increase in taxes is required to fund the equipment reserve. An alternative to this increase would be to reassess current service levels and determine necessity based on the needs of the community. Administration has prepared this plan utilizing a 2% tax increase beginning in 2022 to fund the equipment reserve. The department managers worked hard to create a capital plan as lean as possible while continuing to maintain current service levels. In recognizing the above, please note that this 10-year capital plan is not binding, but rather a project of possible future needs. Administration, with presentation of the capital budget for the subsequent year each fall, will continue to present a prioritized capital budget in conjunction with the operating budget for council's approval. In addition, the 10-year capital plan will continue to be reviewed and updated annually. Please note within this plan are a few different priorities, and this just summarizes some of the larger capital purchases. So providing 4 recommendations as outlined in the facilities review comes to a total cost of $4.6 million. Lift station rebuilds of lift station number 3 and lift station number 1 come to a total cost of $7,400,000. Maintaining and additions to recreation, total cost of almost $36.5 million. Transportation priorities, including additional traffic lights, 6th Avenue Phase 2, Centennial Boulevard widening, and 384 regional paving for a total cost of just over $3 million. And fire safety additions of new fire engines, replacement of a half-ton truck, an F-350 addition, replacement of rescue truck number 13, and replacement of the Brush 14 fire truck for a total cost of $1.25 million. Maintaining equipment for transportation and recreation services for a total cost of $5.7 million. As you can see in the 10-year capital plan document, the city's overall reserve balance builds to over $14 million in 2022. With the items currently in the plan, including the second arena at the Legend Center, this overall reserve balance drops to $5.3 million in 2023. As you can see throughout the capital document, the column internal loan means we are using reserve funds from other reserves to fund capital items. And then we work to rebuild those reserves over time. This payback happens in 2029, where you can see the internal loan balance back at 0 and a total reserve balance estimated to be $26 million by the end of that year. The purchase of the aquatic center could be funded internally in 2031 through draining of multiple reserves, leaving a cumulative reserve balance of $7.8 million by the end of the year. It is important to remember, should council decide to borrow internally, that you are choosing priorities possibly at the expense of other capital items and could end up in a borrowing position in the future. Administration would recommend that council be very focused and specific in determining priorities and focus funds toward those specific priorities appropriately. Administration would suggest that council consider tax increases to support funding of priority projects and build the specific reserves to strategically fund priority capital projects as an alternative to draining other reserve accounts that have been accumulated with intention. Or alternatively, increase taxes to repay the reserves that have been borrowed from. The recommendation that I have is that the 2021 to 2031 10-year capital plan be adopted at the next regular meeting of council.
Questions? No questions? Okay, Councillor Ramage.
Thanks, Mayor Philipchuk. And definitely thank you to the senior managers and administration for the work putting together at the capital plan. Without a doubt, it is a large undertaking. I did come prepared with a number of questions, but I think it comes down to back at the last committee of the whole, my understanding was that the senior managers were working on putting some of these capital plan reports together to supplement this review of the 10-year capital plan. However, I only seem to have received the background information from Manager Weeb with Public Works. Did the other senior managers submit similar reports?
So we did receive a plan from Fire Chief Austin. I didn't include it because basically just what it basically just said that the plan that we have presented worked with his plan. So that's why that one was not included.
Oh, okay. I think from my perspective, more information is always helpful, particularly as a first-term councillor, because what I see in the capital plan is that there are a number of decisions and priorities that will need to be made. And pardon me, but without this background from the senior managers to understand the importance of why all those items are in the capital plan, is going to be difficult to make some of those decisions.
I can maybe jump in to try to clarify that, in that I guess what we had put forward as a plan, and as I had mentioned several months ago, that the senior managers were having trouble getting to a point of where we would be down to that 1% versus the 4%, and we have presented here with a 2%, and I guess that's something that council is going to have to. There certainly will be if the 2% isn't accepted, over the 10 years, and of course it'll be discussed at next year's annual capital deliberations. But for the 10-year, we're projecting that it need a 2% increase to go into the equipment pool, mostly to accommodate what the managers were saying that they needed before. So a lot of them have indicated that yes, we found that there was there's going to be a reduction in service if we have to get to the 1% at the 2%. They seem to be able to accomplish it over the next 10 years of what you're seeing there without with minimal reduction in service, except for what you've already heard and what was presented with the Public Works Manager's report. So everybody else was asked to provide if they could not accommodate the 2%, and if they felt that there was going to be a reduction in service to get to that 2%, then they were to provide a report with that. So as in regards to the fire chief's report, what he presented in his report is exactly what is in the 10-year capital. So there was no more requirement needed than that to provide a report, in our view.
Oh, okay, and certainly I appreciate all the comments, and again, all the work that goes into it. From my perspective, though, and it's difficult to make a decision on whether, and this isn't even necessarily about a tax increase or what the baseline is, as we've talked about before. We don't want to necessarily just set the tax baseline so that we can include all the projects, but rather where is that appropriate level. But going without getting too much into the details of every single item line, there's a few items within the capital plan that without the background information from the senior managers, I have questions of whether they should be included, and perhaps that's a conversation for the strategic planning session. But I was hoping to receive more information, as that was my understanding coming out of our February 16th Committee of the Whole meeting.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Okay, go ahead. Same Manager Smith, or you want
No,
to?
I was going to say it was mine as well, Councillor Ramich, that if we couldn't accommodate the 10-year capital budget without a significant increase to the taxes, then by all means we would have to show that here's in order to get to a 2% or a 1%, here is the reductions that are going to have to take place. Here is the reduction in service levels that you're going to receive. And we didn't see that getting to the 2% or very few. We can certainly have the discussion, and that's kind of what this is about. We don't get together very often with council to know what they're thinking. So I guess if there's some projects in which you want to have more discussion on, we're certainly open to that as well, but to be helpful.
Okay. And I think what we came out of the February meeting too, and I'll get to Councillor Beck next here with out of the February meeting, was this is today's plan. And we realize we have a strategic planning, which will be the first one for 3 of our councillors and first time for the new mayor. So with that will there'll be a new plan with some of the changes along the way. And I think that's where we can dig into the weeds a bit more and try and get into that we're on the same page moving forward. And I know that was the challenge here, that we need to have a 10-year plan to be able to get funding or to be able to meet a timeline. So that was part of why we are moving it forward to today. But it is, as of today, doesn't mean that we can't head down, because it's a long-term plan, that we take another look at it. We're always taking a look at annually, but we're also going to take a look at thoroughly after our strategic plan and then moving forward with that. Councillor Beck.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Philip. Yeah, and I guess just to kind of let's say forward that particular point there, the recommendation that this actually comes to the next council meeting, honestly, with this year, like they're getting with this year, I do struggle with that particular aspect, just because we are going to go into the let's say into our strategic planning session, let's say within 3 weeks. I just don't know, let's say, how bad it might reflect on our community if hypothetically we were to let's say pass this at the next meeting of council, and then with this year 2 weeks after that do our strat plan, and then with this year, if there could be parts of our budget that actually look quite different, and I can certainly get into a few of the specifics as to things that I think might be items of let's say discussion and certainly priority. So I don't know, with this year, I suppose the question for City Manager Smith is, with this year, if we were to pass this budget here, or let's say follow the recommendation, have this come to council, pass it, and then with this year 2 weeks later do the strat plan session and have a different looking capital plan, is that going to reflect badly on the city of Warman with government relations?
I would suggest not. We want the budget to be as realistic as possible, and that, to be honest, government relations is only doing it to make sure that that we are doing at least a minimum of a 5-year capital plan. Lots of people do 10 and beyond, which I think is prudent. These budgets are long-term. They change with priorities, and even something that we would maybe set now and 2 weeks from now, although I think that's why I was providing the recommendation a couple of weeks ago that we wait till after, is because then you can provide direction and then you kind of know your focus. But it's certainly, we can, we can adopt this. We can send it off to the province. We can meet the March 31st deadline, and then I guess after the I would suggest that after the strategic planning, that if there is a change in focus to what's in this budget, then you may want to, as a council, sit down and have another go at it. But I don't think that we wouldn't be submitting another one to the province. We would, whatever they got on the by March would be what we would provide to them. And then you could do another budget in 6 months' time if it wasn't reflecting what you wanted to do after your strategic planning meeting.
Mhm.
Hope that makes sense.
Yeah. So, let's say, like on that particular line, then couldn't we just send in the current plan, that we have without actually having to pass it, or does that actually have to be passed as a resolution of council each year?
It has to be passed by resolution of council each year so that we can say that it's been this 5-year capital or 10-year capital has been adopted by council. That's what we send off to the government.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, like I guess as a general conversation, like one thing that I would, say, to council, like in terms of my feelings on this is, certainly if it needs to go to council for passing, to get, to satisfy the requirements for the, for the Ministry of Government Relations, I'm okay with that particular aspect. However, I would like to put out the, let's say the notation that, certainly with this year, like there's a number of things that, that are identified, especially in the first 4 years here, that I do think we need to have a little bit more conversation about, let's say at our strat plan in terms of what that looks like. And I'm just going to highlight one, let's say one particular example. This is in 2023. We talked about the city hall expansion / renovation. We haven't really talked about what that looks like, or let's say what let's say what the outcomes are that we're actually looking for. So there again, we have a placeholder amount in there of $500,000. But with this year, like there again, without real context as to is that money being spent to accommodate particular goals that we're after, and whether or not those goals have shifted, our budget could look, quite a bit different, depending on what conversations happen at our strategic planning. So I guess what I'm trying to say overall is I'm, based on what administration's saying, I'm willing to pass this to satisfy government relations. At the same time, I do think that there are some greater conversations and certainly some outcomes necessary at our strategic planning, and revisions would have to be made to this. So I guess I'll leave it at that. And Gary, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. And again, just a bit of a comment with that too, is that the strategic planning, we probably won't be going through the line items of this capital budget, but that is the starting point. As you say, that's the starting point to get into it, where we may need a budget meeting to move into it, which would start that process that we're going to move back into a regular process after the election year and everything else. But it is the high level ideas that come out. And I agree with you there, but it will be the one that will give focus to management for them to come back and bring the different levels, how things have changed, management bring it back to us, and we start to get into the very individual things after that. So it's a process. And I guess the starting point is the high level. What are we all about? What do we want? And what services are we refusing to lose? That's really where our strat planning comes in. And then it goes into now, how can we budget for that? And so it moves into next year's budget anyway, in a lot of ways, once you move into a strategic planning like that.
True. But certainly I guess in terms of like our strat planning, certainly like that high level concept is certainly needed and required. And that's where, let's say, like a greater understanding as to what's in, like, especially in like the next, like in between now and 2024 is certainly going to be important for us to fully understand, in terms of those are things that that we are moving forward with. And I suppose, like the thing behind that is with every new council, new priorities do come along. So it does kind of highlight the point that that Councillor Ramage had brought forward in terms of every councillor having a really good idea as to what each of these line items actually are. So that way there, when it does come down to our strategic plan, especially if we're not going to focus on these 4 years of the let's say of the capital budget, that are already presented, that we let's say understand that as either something already going ahead or things that might need to change based on priorities and outcomes that our council would want to see. So I guess it feels a little bit disjointed with me on that, Gary, in terms of how those two things are going to mesh together. So I don't know, like I'm certainly hoping that we can have that bit of a conversation as to what these look like, why they're there, and why they're important. So I guess that does go back to Councillor Ramage's point of like a greater understanding and more detail in terms of the content.
Okay, fair enough. And I think we've heard that, and I think that does come forward, because if they are not priorities, they probably will not surface at our strategic planning and that we have in a couple of weeks. So if they're, I guess that gives a lot of guidance to our senior administration moving forward by what comes forward from all of that. And you're right, we do need to come prepared. There's a survey beforehand. What would you like to see? Some of those things can definitely create the conversations that will happen during our full day session. Councillor C.
Thank you, Mayor Pilchuck. I echo some of the comments that were made by both Councillor Ravage and Councillor Beck. And bearing in mind that as a first-term councillor, there's many things that have probably been discussed prior to my coming on board, so to speak, that maybe other council members and certainly administration feel has been covered. So I'm not looking to beat a dead horse by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly would look for some clarity on some of the budgeting reasons that we're putting these in. I don't have an issue or a concern with submitting this to show the provincial government that we are doing our due diligence and that we are maintaining the planning that is expected of us. But certainly getting into, and without going through each item, there's certainly some questions that I have as to not questioning department managers saying that they need, say, a piece of equipment or whatever the case is, but really looking for just the reasoning behind it. It's not really a justification, but more, we need to replace this truck because this one has 1 million kilometers and, it's going to cost us more to maintain it than it is to keep it, as opposed to something of, well, we've always replaced trucks every 7 years, so we're just replacing another one. Because to me, that's not a good allocation of our resources of money. If we can make something work, we certainly want to look at that. So it's more of I'm hoping in the strategic planning that we can sit down and have some just really frank conversations on it as to why do we need to do this? This is why I don't think we should. This is why I think we should, and really prioritize some of those items, because I think that it's a very fluid document, and it's hard to say that in 2022, as an example, picking on something that we need to allocate $15,000 to replace a rooftop unit at the Brian King. Okay, I'm not opposed to doing that, but why do we need to do that? So it's just some of that more information, as I think Councillor Beck mentioned as well, that I will certainly be looking for as well. So I would appreciate, people being ready for those questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Any other questions on this topic? Okay.
Okay, the next item I have is the employee satisfaction survey. The employee engagement rate increased to 80% this year in comparison to 72% last year. Administration is pleased to see increased participation year over year and will continue to encourage employees to complete the survey. Overall results of the survey were positive. Consistent comments throughout the survey saw employees praise their coworkers and comment on the teamwork within their departments, the camaraderie amongst their team, and the good working relationships between staff and managers and supervisors. Employees recognize their appreciation for the feelings of job security, the opportunity to work within their community, and the flexibility to manage a work-life balance. Employees express satisfaction with their compensation and benefits at almost 84%, very satisfied to satisfied, but did comment that they would like to see a flexible health spending account. Administration will review the City of Warman's current benefits plan provided by Canada Life through SUMA and inquire if there are options available for some personalization of benefits.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? A very positive survey results for sure, and thanks for sharing that. Councillor Beck. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, certainly, I mean, like it is, let's say like really good that we have, let's say like that base survey, that is comparable between years, so that way there we can certainly engage our employees and get that feedback. I do have a bit of a question there regarding that flexible health spending account. With this year, is there, I'm like when I did some investigation on this, just real quick and high level, with this year, like I've seen it used in the United States, but I haven't seen it used in Canada, or like at least, like I didn't find any with a quick search. Like, is that something traditionally offered that we just haven't really heard about?
So it is something that private companies offer fairly often. Not a lot of municipalities do offer it. We were able to find a couple who do. But one of the things that we were actually quickly able to discover as well through Canada Life, through SUMA, is that they do have an option to kind of decrease the level of coverage on prescriptions that we have right now, and then provide a health spending account so people could have the option to spend that difference on prescriptions or elsewhere if that's where they saw necessary. So through discussions with our HR generalist, there would be, to do something like that would have zero effect on the cost to the municipality, but it would be a change in the service that's provided to the employees. So we would want to make sure that that wasn't just a few comments on a survey, but something that employees are actually wanting before we were to move ahead with something like that.
So this is let's say like a purely a employee self-funded account that, so with this year, like there would be like an extra line of deduction on their pay stubs, and that kind of thing to, let's say reflect, let's say however much money might be going into that health savings account. Then
it's not employee funded. Like to describe it, I suppose maybe a little bit differently is what the municipality pays right now for employees to have 100% coverage. If we were to reduce that coverage instead to 80%, and then that difference in cost would go into a health spending account. So then employees would have that health spending account available. So if it's an employee who utilizes a lot of prescriptions, they would now be automatically, when they use their card at the pharmacy, rather than being covered 100%, they'd be covered 80%, but then they would have their health spending account to be able to submit receipts in for coverage. Or then if you have a different employee who doesn't utilize much for prescriptions, but say goes over every year on their glasses coverage, they could instead use that health spending account specifically towards their needs, their glasses, for example, in that example.
Gotcha. Okay. So, let's say after this does get investigated, then it would kind of come back to council in terms of, like these are the options here that we might have, because like, I guess with this here, like I guess what I'm trying to say is that, or, just trying to get to, with this year, we have had some comments back from our employees now saying that this might interest them. But if we change our plan, is that going to change for everybody, or would that just be like an offer for the employees to choose whether or not they get 100% coverage as is now, or go to that, let's say that 80%, and
right,
with the health?
I can. I'll maybe jump in here because really what we've done is we've done a survey. We do this every year. Every time a survey is done, we look at, we do a lot of things well, and we continue to do them well, and then there's the odd comments that we get about things that we could maybe look at improving upon. And so that's kind of what the management has put forward here, is that'll be something that we'll look at to determine how we can accommodate, may or may not be able to accommodate some type of benefit in the future for the staff. But we'll look at all of that, because some people will look at it as a takeaway and others will look at it as a a definite bonus. But we'll have to have that discussion with the staff before anything gets brought back to council. It was just one of those things that we recognize that there's not a lot of areas, to be honest, for improvement. With the city's done very well. I think the satisfaction survey is well above industry standard, which is great to see. And but that's because we've improved any areas that we can improve, and we'd do the same here if we certainly can. So hope that answers the question.
Yeah, Excellent. Thank you very much. And, certainly just as a final comment, Gary, with this year, I'd certainly like to thank administration, Amanda, Lynn, for certainly going through, tabulating the results and certainly creating those high level statements, certainly showing us the, let's say the pulse of the employees out there. So thank you very much for that. And I certainly appreciate the information that has come forward. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Beck. And just to echo a little bit of that, just to say that it also shows that you're looking at the survey and you're creating action plans where you're at least looking into it. And I think that that's always very, very good for employees to see that, you know what, you've looked at it, this is what you've heard, you're at least looking into it, and then you can share options moving forward. So excellent with that. You can move on to your last slide. Are any other questions with that one? Or comments? Okay, your last item.
The last item I just have is the assessment roll, which City Manager Smith kind of touched on as well. Just please be advised that the City of Warman opened our tax roll for public inspection March 1st, 2021. As a reminder, 2021 is a reval year based on Section 185 of the Cities Act. In a reval year, the city is required to have an open appeal period not less than 60 days after the assessments are mailed. As such, the roll will be closed on April 30th.
Thank you.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions on any of that. Okay, we'll move down then to our Public Works Utility Transportation Manager, Manager Weed.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Today, I guess starting off the report, staff are widening streets, hauling snow. Well, that's certainly changed here in the last week. It looks quite sunny and warm, which is great to see. Our storm ponds are filling up and we've started pumping in a few lift stations. We've experienced very minimal frozen sewer lines. A few on 6th Avenue South, but really pretty good considering the cold weather we had a couple weeks ago. I guess that's basically or essentially due to our warm weather we had in January. Going further down, we have a 3-year contract we signed with Xylem, which had to increase because lift station 9 pumps are no longer the developer's responsibility. We will need to do the inspections on those, so that did increase that contract, which expires next year. And they also did repair that storm pump in sewage pump station number 4, which is now operating. Meter reads were completed. That went well. And also to mention it's a small tool that a lot of us don't think about, but it's borrowed out at our City Hall for locating property pins and whatnot, but a very handy tool for our staff. And we've had to send one in for repair. Very minimal repair on those machines. They work quite well. Into transportation, we have spent a lot of time, as you know, removing snow and preparing for the runoff. We have the majority of our ditches clear. We still are working on one last ditch from the along that ferry road, I guess, coming up to our lagoon. And once we have that complete, we'll probably start the pump. The forecast looks really good. The paint contract, to expound on that a little bit, between Cloverdale and Sherwin-Williams, we'll be purchasing the paint from Sherwin-Williams this year, and the glass beads from Cloverdale. Glass beads go over top of the wet paint just to help that shine, the reflectiveness that you see at nighttime. With a contract with Everline Coatings, or we're considering a contract with Everline Coatings, they painted 2 years ago, and we can see those paint lines still there through the winter, which is great. We haven't had that prior with our with the paint that we've been using, the traffic paint. It's basically it's a solvent base and it's a 6-month life expectancy. And we were looking for something a little more durable so that the lines are visible through the winter, because generally we do scrape down our party streets down to the asphalt. Next year will be 3 years. We will be touching up our lines with our solvent-based paint this year. We possibly may entertain the idea of painting the intersection at First Avenue North and Central. We've had some folks we've seen some folks run the stop sign there, and we're trying to, what can we do to make it more visible? Probably some zebra stripes or the block crosswalks will help make that more visible. And we're working on an estimate right now to see what we can do for an annual contract with Everline Coatings. They apply these TVL durables, which is once it cures, it's like a plastic. It's just a lot more durable than the regular paint. It doesn't wear off as quickly. If you have any questions on that, you can definitely ask. And the traffic lights, again, we're very happy with this new arrangement. The City of Saskatoon lights are functioning well. The response time is fantastic if we have an issue. Some things will remain that we can't repair during the winter, and that's those loops, those traffic loops. They'll have to wait till summertime. And then I guess going down into, I'd like to mention the retirement of Amos Mueller after 20 years. He'll retire with the City of Warman last day, May 31st. And we wish Amos all the best. He definitely has a lot of knowledge over the years he's collected with meter installs. So he'll be missed. And the sidewalk tractor has been approved as per capital budget and a purchasing policy. So we are looking to use that for replacement of our 1960 series, somewhere in their tractor. The tractor's done very well, but it's not very quick, and the older sidewalk tractor could possibly be a replacement for that. So we're going to give that a go. And that's about all I have for my report.
Great. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councillor Johnson.
Hi, Jason. I'm just wondering about that, the painting for the lines and everything that you had mentioned with the TBL product, and that it lasts 3 to 4 times longer than the solvent-based paint that you currently use. Do you have an idea of I know you said that it does cost more, but are we spending more money per year on painting lines over and over and over again when we can maybe cut some costs by taking a hit now and saving as far as the number of years in between paint jobs?
Yeah, so this was a pilot project that was introduced to us as a suggestion we could give this a go. So we definitely were interested in a longer lasting product because ours was not lasting long. We usually paint at least 2 times a year. Rough calculations with our paint we buy and the staff's time they spend into it, we're probably looking at a little higher cost overall. If this paint lasted, if it does last the full 3 years, which we might have to touch it up a little bit, it will be, I think it'll be a break even or cost effective, but we also have lines that are there all the time. So I think it'll be a benefit to use TBL durables. We are meeting with them actually today. It wasn't the appointment, I double booked myself. So I have my supervisor of transportation with him right now. And I just want to see what he can offer us on a 3-year contract. If we would do a third of the lines every year and just rotate them to keep these lines visible. And we'll see what the outcome is of that. But I think it might be a little less expensive if we do take TBL durables. It'll just be a certain amount of money we'll have to start budgeting annually for that. In the past, we would always we painted the lines ourselves, so there was not any budget for that. So we'll have to review that once we get that price.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Councillor Seed, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor Filchuk. Jason, thanks for your report. It's well prepared as usual. I just had a question for you with regards to the sidewalk tractor. I know that the capital budget was approved for that purchase of the unit. I have some significant experience with the company that you've contacted regarding the purchase of that, and would like to, perhaps now is not the proper time, but would like to discuss it with yourself and City Manager Smith. Question for you is that I understand in your report that you had put out for request and only received a quote from one company. I just wanted to find out if you feel that that's because that was more of a very specific unit that you had requested, or whether you feel that this product's not available, or what the reasoning for only getting one requested. Because in my experience, when you're looking at a piece of equipment, with worth $150,000, quite often you get several companies that are interested in providing a quotation on that. So I was just curious to hear your feedback onto why we may have only received it from one company.
So there's 3 companies I'm aware of, and the one company I'm aware of because we did try their sidewalk tractor out in 2014, and that is the one we did purchase now. The other price was Joe Johnson. I apologize for the beeping at my window open and enjoying the fresh air here. But the guys are busy working. The Joe Johnson submitted a price for the trackless again, as they did last time, but they're not part of Sourcewell or Central Source. They're trying to become part of that now. So that is why I did receive a price in December, but they didn't submit one now after the fact when I told them that I was trying with the Sourcewell or Central Source way. And a few hours after I'd submitted my report to Bob or for review, I did receive a price from Willie, I believe it's Superior. I think the company's called Superior, and they're from out of Ontario. I think they have a company in Alberta as well, or an outlet there. And their price was higher, but they did submit a price as well. He had just overlooked it, I guess. They are part of Sourcewell, so they could have officially, and they did after the fact, submit a price. But those are the only three I'm aware of with a sidewalk tractor. I looked at other companies like Earthworks. They have a mini loader, and the mini loader it's only a quarter or a third of the horsepower. Really not meant as a sidewalk tractor. They're very kind of a specialty item.
Perfect. Thank you. Like I say, not the time right now, but I would certainly appreciate if we could set up a time just to discuss some information I think I have that I could share with both yourself and City Manager Smith with regards to that specific aspect. And I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Beck.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I do have a few questions. The first one here with Xylem. So the with the price increase there, has that already been reflected in our budget?
With the pump increase or the maintenance price?
Yes.
Yep, that's fine. That's $175 increase. So,
yep. What I guess I'm asking is like, did we already know this for our budget, and was it approved that way, or is this like an increase?
Yeah, no, this is an after the fact increase. When we reviewed the prices coming in, we noticed that lift station on there, and further checking into it, it was no longer part of the developer's responsibility. So we had to, just as part of an annual maintenance, we did have to add that further, but it was not part of the initial budget.
Okay, yeah, and that was the information that I was looking for. Thank you. Regarding the retirement for Amos, this year, are we planning anything for him? And would there be some recognition through our social media channels and things like that, for the work that he's done? Certainly this year, I'm like in all my years of council, I'm like, I know that we can come up with the best plans and strategies out there in the world, but we need a talented, workforce to actually bring those plans to fruition. And, certainly with this year, recognizing the talent that, that we've had service for 20 years, I think is definitely important moving forward. So I'm just wondering what you might have planned for that. Or just knowing that you have a plan with that, or you will be making one up.
Yeah, spoke with HR on this, and we're not sure where this is all going to be with the, as far as COVID is concerned. It may be similar to our Christmas that we had. It might be with mayor and council, possibly at the shop with our staff only, if it's like small groups that can meet. There is an award for the years of service as well. That's planned. And that's, at this point, that's where we're at. We're just kind of waiting to see how everything plays out.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, with this, certainly with this year, I'm like, my vantage point is, even if it's something after, COVID, where let's say the vaccination rollouts are done, just as long as that there is some recognition, because I know how hard public works works out there, and 20 years is a lot of dedication there. So
absolutely.
Thank you for that. Councillor Peterson had your hand up.
Yeah, I just listened to your comment there about the one company wasn't a part of Sourcewell, and that's the reason for them not submitting a price. I'm leery of these kinds of sourcing, companies and programs, because some companies don't want to be part of those because it's too much effort. And I'm wondering how much especially with the big capital items that you need for public works, I'm wondering if it's not going to be, cost us more being part of that source well than just sourcing normally.
Well, thank you for your comment. And we had there's companies that were approaching us and suggesting Sourcewell, just like with SUMA, which is now Central Source, reaching out and saying they've done all the background homework. The RFP process has been completed. No need to go any further. Just reach out to the company that you want to purchase from and proceed, because it's all good to go. Lowest price. Didn't feel comfortable with that. We thought we'd give this Central Source or Source Pro a go, try it out. But we reached out to multiple companies, and some of them didn't understand, why are you, if you're reaching out to us, why are you reaching out to other companies? Why are you not just buying from us? And that's because I just didn't feel, with that under $75,000 threshold in our purchasing policy, we generally get 3 prices to ensure that we are getting the lowest price or the best bang for our buck. And reaching out to multiple companies with this Sourcewell or Central Source, it's essentially trying to be a good steward of our tax dollars and picking the best company, and without just going to singling one out and picking it. So for next year, I can't say that we'll do Sourcewell again. It might just, anything over that 75 might go to tender next year, and we'll see where it goes. But it was a trial this year to see how this goes.
Okay, thank you for that. And something, I guess, that really could be policy related, coming back to council in that way, as we move forward, because I agree, there's so many out there, and you always wonder, is that which way to go with that, or is it open or not? So, and I know Councillor Beck would probably have more insight with all the municipalities in Saskatchewan offer, but are there others? And then do we need to create a policy that sort of guides all the things that happen that way? So something to discuss later, but I think that we were on that process of saying what is the best for Warman right now that way. Any other questions for Councillor C?
Just a really quick comment, and I'll keep it very brief. I just wanted to thank Jason for all of this. I think that I don't want there to be a perception, at least from my standpoint, that this is questioning why this was done or questioning the work that's been done to put into it. I just think as council, we're really, want to make sure that we're making the best allocation of our resources and our time and our money. So I just really didn't, and I don't think it necessarily came across as it, but a little bit of concern from my standpoint that, Jason, I don't want you to think that we're questioning you in any way on this. It's just, we're trying to better understand the process and make sure that we're all on the same page. So I want to thank you for your time on it, and hopefully we can have these discussions just to make sure that we're doing what's best for our community. So thanks again.
Yep, you're welcome. Agreed.
And it's almost echoing what Manager Weeb had said in some ways, and is this the best way? And I think it's until we sort of evaluate it, we don't really know, and so we will work through that. I was also going to mention congratulations to Amos. He's been there right since the beginning, and I've been there too. So it's great to see his work and his positivity dealing with the city of Warman. Never said, always positive about all that happened. So I hope we can do something for him. I know it'll be, if it's something small, it'll be that way right now, but the recognition will definitely come through our social media. I think that was, any other questions for Manager Weep? Okay, thank you. And I'm just going to mention that just seeing the crossover of the different things, I see that in the newspaper reports, the ones coming out here, that planning sometimes gets tied with other areas just because planning is overall with it, just like utilities and all the way through. So there's recognitions and those types of things coming out from the different reports, and I'm fine with that. As we move forward, we can keep that going. Let's move on to our next one here. I think this went. Let's move down to planning.
Good
Good afternoon, Mayor Filipchuk, members of council. A bit of a shorter report for the month of March. I'll just walk you through a bit of the preamble here. Continuing to work on the P4G zoning bylaw. There was a bit of a holdup in terms of both the North Concept Plan and the zoning bylaw at the last ROC meeting. So we've actually, as noted in my report, just switched around the next ROC and ROC executive meeting so we can have that ROC executive first, kind of get all of the mayors and Reeve on board before we take it to the larger group. But it is slowly making its way and will be coming to council for some further review in the future. We are still working on that waterworks policy. It's currently with our consultant engineer, just doing a quick review of one of the sections that pertains to some of the service connections, just to make sure that that area is all correct and I'm not missing anything. You'll notice some fencing's gone up across from the Legend Center. The new Shoppers Drug Marts permits have been approved and issued, so we're anticipating construction. Actually, they've already started on some of the piling work, but we're anticipating that construction will ramp up here in the next few weeks. With the warmer weather, bylaw enforcement has been fairly busy. You may have seen from both Mayor Filipchuk's emails as well as some of the posts on Facebook. We're running a little bit of a program right now to try and incentivize the residents of Warman to kind of take on some of the ownership over keeping the parks clean with dog doo-doo, I guess be my term I'm going to use today, and garbage. So we're going to keep track of anyone that we do give gift cards to. If they're willing to, we'll take a picture of them and kind of use that to help boost some of our social media presence and kind of see how things work out there. Both the Co-op gas station and Tim Hortons nicely donated some gift cards to the city for us to use for this purpose. So we thank them for that as well. I provided some updated permit numbers for council. Not a lot has changed since the last time I provided numbers. We have had a couple of more houses, and as noted in the end cap there, we've got a few more permits kind of on deck, which will be included with obviously the next round of numbers that come out. As usual too, I've provided, I guess I missed last month, but provided some updated real estate numbers thanks to Laura Beliski. Provided kind of all of the stats, as everyone's probably aware of from kind of the news out there. Very strong market still. Both sales are up, listings down, and average prices are up. So things still looking fairly strong in the real estate market. I'll maybe just stop there, Mayor Filipchuk, before I go into the next item, just if there's any questions with that first part.
So any questions from the first part here before he moves on? Councilor Ramage.
Thank you, Mayor Filipchuk, and thanks for the report, Brad. And as I mentioned at the last council meeting, really encouraging with the development permits and the values that development continues to be strong in our area. Like I'll be saying in my upcoming newsletter, I think this city is the best place to live, work, play, and invest. And I think our real estate numbers and our development numbers strongly support that. I did have a quick question on that intersection of Central and Highway 11. Do we have any ideas in mind in terms of what we might be asking highways for, or is this more of a discussion about, I imagine it's preventing people from crossing straight over to Ferry Road?
Yeah, so we're aware of the issue, and that is the issue that we'll be discussing with them. We've got obviously some suggestions, but at the end of the day, it'll be highways who has to kind of dictate what the solution may be. So first and foremost, I guess it'll be just about vocalizing some of our continued concerns, I guess, with the intersection as it functions now. And then kind of taking a bit of their lead, I guess, on maybe some of the suggestions that they'll propose.
Okay, perfect. That's all the questions I have up until this part of your report.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Peterson.
I did want to comment a little bit about the Central and Highway 11 intersection as well. Brad, I think the piling the snow there during the winter time was a great temporary idea. I mean, it was better than anything highways is, but what, you know, the people that have no regards for our community, they just, and are selfish, they just continue to find ways to circumvent it. And what they did is they started just going in the left-hand lane around it. And I think what we're going to have to look at, whether that's something that we can get the highways to do, or whether it's something that we have to participate in our, ourselves as well, is putting up a median, a fair bit back from the intersection, so that it's practically impossible with traffic coming in all the time to go around it. And then to have, highways to have some sort of center median, so it's also impossible to cross there as well. I think without that, you're still going to see people are going to continue crossing as long as there's any way that they can possibly do it. And I think that we really need to push for a permanent solution from highways that's it's going to take care of it, because otherwise you're going to see something tragic happen there.
Yeah, I agreed. There's still been definitely issues with, people, and I haven't witnessed it myself as of late, but I mean, you can see the tracks. There is still people that are making illegal movements at that intersection. We're also working with the RCMP to see if there's any way that we can maybe boost some enforcement at that intersection for that exact purpose. But yes, I will be communicating our concerns to the Ministry of Highways, and then kind of leaning on them, I guess, in terms of some of the recommendations that they'll bring forward, and then kind of take it from there.
Thank you. And I was going to say the RCMP, that's a good angle to go with enforcement for sure, because that's a fairly obvious one to everyone. Councillor Beck.
Yeah, thank you. Brad, so regarding the Lagoon project, with this here, there's only 2 more contracts left to sign. Do any of those contracts have any financing or ongoing maintenance costs that that we're going to be, let's say, needing to be aware of going forward?
No, not for the most part. For the most part, they include the construction, then obviously remediating any of the land back to kind of its original state, ensuring that we're not affecting any of the opportunity to use the land for agricultural purposes in the future. We have had some experience actually with some of these landowners in the past with some of our other force mains that go to the lagoon. In years kind of after construction, there has been some minor slumping where, maybe in one area compaction wasn't done 100%, or you end up with some extra surface drainage, which makes the ground slump a little more than it typically would. We may have some very minimal costs in years moving forward, just in terms of repairing some of that. But there is also within whoever the tender goes to in terms of the installation of the pipeline, there is some warranty requirements on their end for kind of that ongoing maintenance over the first 3 years as well. So our ongoing costs should be minimal. However, after that kind of 3-year warranty, there can still be some, but it would be very minor slumping that we would have to go back and just remedy in terms of perhaps adding some extra topsoil or materials to fill those areas in.
So are all of our contracts, let's say like along that pipeline, are all of those the same, or are each one of those, let's say, different in terms of, let's say, landowner expectations?
For the most part, they are the same. There is the odd clause that may differ from one to the other, and that may just be due to the circumstances of their land or where they're located in relation to the pipeline, how much of their land we need to use, legal descriptions, those kinds of things. But for the most part, the basic framework of them is exactly the same.
Excellent. All right. Thank you.
Councillor Ramage.
Thanks, Mayor Filipchuk. Just a quick comment back to Central and Highway 11. Well, I definitely agree with Councillor Peterson's point about safety and the potential of something happening if people continue to decide they're going to go their own way. The question I would have for Brad is, if based on safety considerations, highways came back with a recommendation to put a center median that would prevent crossing the road. Do we have a plan for Central Street? And this might get more into economic development, but do we have a plan for what Central Street might look like and how we could re-envision that if, for safety purposes, that intersection was closed by highways?
So I don't want to speak for Councillor Peterson, but I'm guessing he's not meaning a center median where you would stop that westbound traffic. I think what he's meaning is in the original kind of conceptual plans that we looked at with council, with council after highways provided us with some information, there was a bit of a curb, so to speak, or I don't know a better way to describe it technically right now, but basically something that kind of directed that turning lane into its own lane, basically, that blocked traffic from going eastbound in it. And I think that's what Councillor Peterson's referring to. I don't think he's referring to a complete closure of cross traffic on the highway. But he can correct me if I'm wrong. But to that point, when we did agree to endorse the ministry's recommendations to change some of the turning movements at that intersection, the message back to us was that they felt with the changes and the elimination of certain turning movements that intersection could stay open, for the most part indefinitely, and so, unless there was some drastic conditions that changed. So right now, I'm not anticipating the conversation going in the route of altogether closure or reduction in more turning movements. But obviously, if that's something that they brought up as an option, we would have to bring that back to council. But right now, I'm not anticipating any of that.
Okay, thanks very much, and and I appreciate you highlighting that from the city and Councillor Peterson's perspective. I don't think any of us would be advocating for that to be closed, and that's not the intention that I got from Councillor Peterson. More so that if highways came to us with that suggestion, what plans we have to address some of the other impacts of that would be, but for now, we can table that for now, I suppose.
Thank you. And we were very adamant with the highways for them when they chose the north interchange that this intersection would stay open in the way it is right now. So I mean, that would be one that we would stay with along the way. We signed off with the north location with that in mind, that Central was still had its place that way. So it's not even on the table in our discussion right now, but I understand your concern if they did bring it up. Councillor Seed.
Just a very quick question. And Brad, in the past, have we ever asked developers, I'm specifically referring to shoppers as an example, there's lots of social media questions. I've even received a few phone calls and a couple of emails from people wondering what's going on. I feel that if you follow any social media page kind of on Warman, you should know what's going on. That's my personal opinion. But have we ever considered just asking developers to put up one of those, very basic signs that just says future home of, shoppers or Joe's, whatever. I mean, something that would just maybe answer some of those community questions. Has that been done in the past, or is that something that you feel you'd have any interest in maybe asking developers to do?
We haven't done it in the past. We've never specifically asked in the past. We have had conversations just in terms of, depending on the business and the type of business that they do, a lot of them have different methods of how they kind of want to slowly get the word out there and then kind of, I guess, eventually grand open. We've never asked that question, but I think we could work with economic development perhaps to see about maybe some changes in that regard, or what we could do to let the public know. In terms of like public information, as soon as we approve the permits, basically it's considered public information at that point. So, I would see nothing wrong from the informing the public perspective. It would probably just be working with Brennan now to communicate that with the stores or the whatever may be opening.
Yeah, thanks. I really think it would just, it would promote economic development within the city in a good way, let people know what's kind of going on, keep the buzz going, and at the same time, probably save yourself and Brendan and City Manager Smith and a whole bunch of us councillors a whole lot of time of having to answer the same question over and over and over and over again. So it's just a suggestion I thought I'd pass along. Thank you.
Thanks. We'll look into it.
Any other questions or comments on this top half? Okay, we'll let you move on.
So the next item is a bit of a different one. I had a bit of just a quick little note in my last committee of the whole report regarding a landowner in the city on the west end of Central Street who is interested at perhaps looking at changing the zoning on the property to accommodate more of a live work type of development where you could have someone basically owning a house and running a business that's non-traditional out of that home. This is kind of not along the similar lines that you might think of when you think of live work in an urban setting, with living quarters either above or perhaps behind and some sort of commercial on the bottom. This is a little more geared towards your kind of contractor, small business owners that maybe have some storage or manufacturing requirements that they could utilize these larger lots for developing a house that's large enough to be a home, but also big enough that they could have a small workshop, store some materials within a attached or detached shop, and as well do some basic work out of the home besides just a home office or other. I know there's not a ton of information per se. We are working with the landowner and basically providing council with a couple of options in terms of how, from a planning perspective, we feel we could address or help implement something along these lines. As mentioned, we're kind of working with the landowner. This is a type of development that he's seen in some of his travels across North America, specifically some in the States, as he's provided some examples to us. We don't have a lot of the finite details yet. Those would kind of be worked out as we kind of go through some of the development of the district or however we choose to move forward with this. But it was something we wanted to bring to council to see, first of all, what the appetite is in changing the zoning on those sites on Lowen Court on the west end of town. And if this is a development that perhaps we would be interested in taking a closer look at and perhaps adjusting our zoning to allow for it. From a planning perspective, it's a little bit different, but that being said, we can see a market for it. I've had conversations just offhand with the type of demographic, that the landowner could see moving in here, and the conversations I've had with those people seem to be quite positive for a development of this type and something that they would be interested in. And as I alluded to in my report, the developer has said that he has a few of the lots already spoken for if this was to move forward. So I basically just provided council with two different approaches that we could take to implementing this through the zoning bylaw. The first wouldn't require a development of a new district, but rather some changes to the way we do home occupations and non-traditional. We basically treat the whole development as a discretionary use and apply some conditions. There are some downsides to this, specifically having to bring each development to council for discretionary approval, but also maybe losing some control over the overall usage of the cul-de-sac and what uses could specifically be there. The other option we looked at was basically just creating a whole new district that would have its own set of regulations, its own set of uses that could be allowed on these lots, minimum requirements, everything that you would see in any of the other districts we currently have, but a new district for this specific cul-de-sac. Haven't provided any necessarily recommendation yet, although we do see some benefit from going with the second option. The negative, especially for the landowner's perspective, is the amount of time it would take to kind of go through those processes. But from a city perspective and trying to manage this development, probably the second one with creation of a district would probably be the preferred option for planning. But again, we wanted to bring this to council to have a kind of overall high level discussion and kind of see where council is at. And if there's specific questions that they want us to go back to the landowner and get answers to, that we have those in front of us to know what to do. So I guess at this point, I'll just kind of open it up for discussion if you're okay with that, Mayor Philipchuk, and kind of see where that goes.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I was hoping for. Councillor Peterson, then Thule.
I was thinking, I agree with you, Brad, that creating a whole new district would probably be a preferred option rather than trying to manage it through what we currently have. But I think as far as what I think that I'd like to see the developer bring forward a full proposal for council to look at that would include some examples of other areas of either Canada or North America where this has been done and kind of how it works. I don't think it should be up to Warman's planning department to go find that information. I think it should be up to the developer to find it and present it as part of a plan for us to consider.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Tully.
I just a couple of really high level thoughts, I guess, about this that have me, I guess, a little bit just a little reluctant right from the get-go. One of them is with an area like this, I'd have a fair bit of concern that we'd want to have a very, very clear direction in the bylaw about what's actually permitted and what isn't permitted. And, just to try to avoid situations where, some of the properties just become sort of either like unsightly or almost a sort of a bit of a nuisance type of a property or disruptive to like neighboring properties, that kind of thing. Because there's some other residential, properties right within the vicinity of this that when they purchase those sites and when they purchase those properties, none of them purchased them with the intention of having, any kind of industrial or business or anything like that right in their backyard. And realistically, it could very well turn into that, depending on what some of the permitted, sort of uses would be. So I do want to be really cautious with where we go on this. I do sort of like the idea in some respects, but we do have a few examples of properties within Warman right now where, we do have some uses that are not really compatible with what's going on around them. And we've actually had, around this table, we've had several discussions about a few of those properties and how they're eyesores or whatever it might be in the bigger picture of the community that we have and what we want things to look like and how we want things maintained. So I think if we do go this direction, I would like to see some really good teeth into how it is that, we'd be able to just even enforce what some of that would look like. And, I don't want to sort of stereotype too much, but sometimes when you talk about some business owners and contractors, you sort of look at the example of a plumber who oftentimes they've got leaky faucets and they've got leaky pipes in their own house because they're too busy fixing other people's. And so when you sort of think that kind of concept, they might be, really busy focusing on their business and that kind of thing, but then letting the properties sort of go to a point where they're maybe just being a little bit of an eyesore or disruptive to neighboring properties. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and kind of all definitely stuff that we've considered, and definitely think there probably with this type of development is a bit of a risk for, and that's I think why if we do go forward with something like this, its own district with its own set of regulations and approved uses would probably be needed. But to your point, bylaw enforcement and some of our other bylaws regarding some of unsightly properties and those types of things may have to be taken a look at as well. Just in terms of residential around, agree, part of either option would be a bit of a consultation with some of the multifamily that's on the north and east sides of this. I'm not sure exactly how their response would be, if their preference would be more single family homes or the previous approved, 3-story apartment style, but all good points and definitely something that we would want to look to manage through bylaw or regulations if something like this went forward.
Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, I was just going to ask how likely would the developer be to bow out if we look at doing a separate kind of area to minimize, I guess, the risk and have different structures put in place to ensure our vision of the city?
I don't think there's a real huge risk on that. He's fairly keen to work with the city to move this forward and understands that it's something new and it may take a little bit of time to develop. He's also owns the land there and wants to see a benefit from it. He has been unable to kind of get the investment or partners in place to do what was originally thought of with the apartment style condos. So I think definitely, even though there is a bit of urgency to him wanting to maximize the potential of the land, he does understand the process to a certain degree and is open to working with the city on providing kind of what needs to be to move this forward.
Okay, Councillor Seed.
Thank you, Mayor Filchuk. Yeah, I would echo Councillor Peterson's request. Is that, to me, this is a foreign concept. It's not something that I've seen or even heard of before. So that certainly doesn't mean that it's a good thing or a bad thing. Just I've never heard of it. And I would certainly like to see examples in other, North American cities. And obviously, the closer the better, or the more cohesive with what Warman is, the better. And I would certainly like to be able to, and I'm not suggesting that you have to do this right off the bat, but I would certainly like to reach out and find out, what their level of concern has been since implementing it. Would they change anything going forward? And quite frankly, if they could go back in time, would they do it again? Because I think you're dealing with a myriad of factors, including what Councillor Tooley had said about those yards becoming unsightly very, very quickly. And then you also have to run into our initial concern is, okay, so person A's got a business here, it's their residence as well. Person B's got something right beside them. Now, what about when person A is doing something late at night that's part of their business, it's disturbing, the residents that are in the lot right beside them? It seems like we're asking for more trouble than it's worth, but I hope I'm very much wrong on that. I would just like to see some examples of it for sure, because it seems like an odd concept to me, but that's just my initial assessment on it.
Yeah, it's definitely something new, I think, for us in terms of at least what our definition from a planning perspective is of live work. Again, kind of my previous comments can see some merit in it, but also totally understand some of the questions or comments that have been raised by council. The only thing I'll just say to your one point there about noise, agree there can be some of those conflicts, but I think you treat it like any other development in terms of noise bylaws, all that kind of stuff. But again, it can become, a bit of an enforcement nuisance if it's an ongoing kind of issue. So definitely comments well received. And if this does kind of move forward, we would definitely try to provide you with some of those examples, but also experiences from other places.
Other councillors? I probably just want to make a couple comments. I know I just looked down the way at Central and Crystal Springs even, and say that 15 years ago we probably didn't envision sea cans and a storage area. So we have to be cautious. And I think what will it look like 15 years from now would probably always be in the back of my mind. And it's sort of using some of the ideas that Councillor Peterson, Councillor Tooley had mentioned with, what can this look like? What will it look like? I'm not sure that's the right place for what he's asking for. I'm not against the idea. I just don't know that's the spot. But just because we have an industrial area and I know we have some retail happening in the industrial area, but maybe that's more of the right area and for this type of concept. But I think that's my caution with it, that what we envisioned and what happened caught us. And now you're in a situation you have, you're caught where you are right now with some decisions that were made a long time ago. I always think of the look, listen, and what's practical there. Like, what would it look like to the people driving down Central, to the people looking out their backyards? One side is okay because it's the graveyard. So but what will it look like even people visiting the graveyard? Like what will it look like? What will the noise be like? Because if a semi's there starting up at 5 a.m. or something's there, I get a little nervous about that. And then is it practical for that area to move in and out of that area with 8 places? Do you have any idea of what size? Because 8, the number that he's talking there seems like they would each have a very large piece of land then.
Yeah, part of the proposal is that the lots would be quite large. I think he's looking at around an acre-ish per lot, or just under an acre per lot. And part of the reason, I guess, for the size of lots is because he's part of the requirements would be that there's quite a large attached garage or area for the storage and equipment manufacturing kind of aspect. So his thought is the bigger lot would be partially, or I guess mostly to deal with some of the size requirements that he figures he would need for the house.
Okay, and we've approved the high density, so the high density is there. So I realized that we weren't talking single families when it was when that first approval was there, and all that legwork has been done. So high density can happen there without anything more. Am I right with that?
Yeah. So right now the area is subdivided into 4 parcels. With a bit of MR dedication at the back, and it's currently zoned R3. So he has basically, and we've given a discretionary approval for the 4-story condos or apartment rentals. So basically he would have approval to move forward with that concept right now. Other things he could do under R3 zoning would be some sort of townhouse development or density along those kind of density targets. Or there would be, some sort of rezoning to another type of district would be basically his options.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Anyone else or points? I think it's good to sort of flush them out right now as Brad goes back to him. Councilor Ramage.
Just a quick comment that I think I would echo a lot of what has already been said. So it's been why I haven't really put my hand up yet, except that I do think that the live work option, even though this is a non-traditional version of it, is quite intriguing. I'd like to know more about it. Much like Councillor Peterson said, I think we need to have a better idea of what they're envisioning, what that looks like, and how that fits into the area. Because while we could kind of enforce it on a bylaw basis, if we're looking at more of an industrial use within that residential area, I think you're at risk of creating a bylaw issue that we'd spend a lot of time on. So I think that would be the value of its own zoning district with some very specific controls. So just to echo that, I would agree with the comments around the table.
No, and I appreciate all of council's comments. This is kind of the purpose or why we brought in this higher level report, is just to kind of get a feel from the rest of council, both in terms of initial thoughts on the proposal, even though I know there's not a ton of detail there, but also what kind of questions you guys would want answered if this does go to kind of that next level. So I think what we'll do at this point is probably go back to the developer. All of the comments that we were brought up today, we have contemplated in our own minds and tried to get answers to some, but it's been a bit of a slug so far. So we'll go back to the developer, have conversation with him on terms of how he wants to proceed, and if it is a proceed with this type of development, we'll obviously go back to try and answer all the questions and concerns that have been brought up today before it kind of comes back to council for further discussion.
Great, thank you. Is there any final comments? I think almost everyone has commented on this one. Okay, good. And I also just wanted one last thing with Councillor Ramage saying the live work idea I love. Like, I think that's the sort of new way of looking at things, especially down central and some of our new areas that way. So the live work doesn't worry me. It's the industrial sort of thing aspects that worries me. So, okay, you have one final one here with Steve?
Yeah, so the last item for discussion today in the planning report is a subdivision at 109 Steve Street. As I've alluded to in my report, when a subdivision is approved by council, they have 1 year, or sorry, once it's approved by the province, they have 1 year to raise title on that subdivision. They can request an extra year, so a total of 2 years to raise the subdivision, or register the subdivision, I should say. If it's not done within those 2 years, it requires a new approval from council in order to register it. So this is one we've approved in the past. There's no concerns from a planning perspective in terms of meeting all kind of requirements under zoning bylaw. So our recommendation is to move this forward, and we would bring it to council on Monday for endorsement. No rezoning or any advertising or anything like that required with this one. It's just a resolution of council.
Any comments with that one? Councillor Beck.
Thank you. Just a note there, Brad, you do mention that a new curb valve is required as a condition of the subdivision approval. Is that a change by the province, or what constituted that? And also with this year, whose responsibility is that? Is that going to be on the city and then charged back to the, let's say, to the owner, or does the owner look after that?
That's a requirement that we've started to specify through our approvals, and it's always been something we've required, but we ran into some issues in the past where after subdivisions complete, there'd be some discrepancy in terms of what the owner thought they were required to do. So we just do it as a condition of approval now. And it's something that the developer, builder, landowner is responsible for cost and installation, and they have to get installation done by one of the approved contractors that we have in the city of Warman. So it's their responsibility, their cost, and they have to use a contractor that's provided us with the references and proof of insurance and all of that before they can do it.
Okay. And is there a time requirement for the owner to get that done?
It's a condition of approval. So typically they have a year, but in most cases with a subdivision like this, it's because they're building something, and obviously they would need to have that separate curb stop in before they can connect to water and sewer. So it's usually something that really doesn't take policing, because as soon as someone goes to build on it, it's something they need, but they do have up to a year to install.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Thank you, Manager Toth.
Thank you.
Move down to Recreation and Manager McGonigal.
Good afternoon, Mayor Philipchuk and members of council. You have my report in front of all of you. It's primarily an informational report. There's a couple items that I would like to touch on a little bit. Just to start off, at the arenas, Legend Center, the ice is coming out as of March 25th. This is going to give us an opportunity to get our LED light project underway in the arena without affecting rentals come May, June, July, August. So it couldn't have worked out better that hockey was winding down. Diamond Rodeo Arena, I'm still working with Warman Minor Hockey on when the ice is coming out there. We're still in discussions of what their pay-to-play program will be. If we keep it in, we'll definitely be a cost recovery program going into April. So we're still working on a couple of those items. Parks and sports fields, just a quick update. The ice as of March 5th was nice and thick. It was 23 to 24 inches thick. Unfortunately, with the way our pond systems work, that isn't always the case, that they're safe. The melt runs either on top or it runs off the streets and underneath, and that creates issues and swirling and everything else. So we deemed the storm retention ponds on March 8th as being unsafe. And we asked everybody to get their equipment and stuff off as soon as possible, and that has been done. Signs have been displayed. Sandwich boards are out with danger thin ice. We've done our social media. So I think everybody is seeing that the ponds are melting fairly quickly and there's water on it. They're not safe at this point in time. As of this morning, all outdoor skating arenas were closed. It went quickly in a couple. Went quickly more so in RJ Gidluck, which is the fire hall outdoor rink. Went real quick, followed by Prairie Oasis. And then the last one was the Lions Park one. That one gets shelter from the trees, so it took a little bit longer to get out. Just to touch base a little bit further on Mayor Smith's comments at the beginning of working with SHA to create a vaccine center. We are working with them. We haven't heard from them today. We're hoping to get a phone call today. They are looking, it went from a 2-day operation to being from April 1 to September 30th kind of thing. 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. So we have a plan going forward if they do come to us. We have a number of consistent rentals that we have in there, plus it's wedding season. So a lot of those brides are hanging on, hoping that some of the restrictions will change and we'll be able to accommodate them. But at the same time, for the greater good, the vaccine center is something that needs to go. We will provide the 9 weddings with options going forward for their venues. for their event. So we're hoping we're in the discussion here of having our Brian King Center as a center. So programs and community updates. I just gave you a list there of some of the that is all of the grants and funding opportunities that we are trying to take advantage of going forth here. I think the top 3 have been secured and are in place, and the bottom ones are still we're waiting for some kind of decision to be made on them. We're hoping to go forward with over half of them if we come back with that. So positive news, there is a little bit of funding out there. So we're seeing more and more of it, and whether that's because of COVID, we're thinking that. So that's good for us as well. The community grant program, we reached out to all of our people that we provide funding for. They're all using the funding, which is fantastic. There's a lot of communities where a lot of programs didn't run and they didn't provide anything. We were kind of the opposite. So our community groups are all using their funds. The only ones that weren't were us, the city of Warman. And that was simply because we use the funding we get from there to do a lot of our special events. And of course they didn't run. So we did spend the money. We did buy some equipment and items like that, some hockey nets and some tennis nets and some volleyball nets. We bought some supplies to do a croak and crawl court in behind the Diamond Rodeo Arena. So we did spend the money that we needed to. And so if things go right, we should have no problem spending all the money and not having to return any of it. The couple of things that I just wanted to touch on is one coming out of the Recreation Advisory Committee meeting. That meeting, we approved the next 4 years of rental levies and rates. It is a mix of increases of 1.5% to 3% across the boards. That is an attempt to kind of stay within what our cost recoveries are, and that's the Legend Center being 80 to 90, Diamond Arena being 70 to 80, Brian King Center being 50 to 60, and parks being anywhere between 10 and 20%. So we've taken kind of our anticipation of where we're going to be and what it's going to look like. Some areas we held, some areas we went up, like I said, 1.5% to 3%. So as you move forward and you approve those rec minutes, that documentation, that format will be approved, and that's what we'll go by for the next 4 or 5 years of rates and levies. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. And then the last thing I had was in previous meetings, we have talked about our recreation software and the sunset of Internet Explorer platform. I had mentioned that we were trying 3 different softwares, and we did. And the one we are going to go with is Perfect Mind. It seems to fit what we do here, and it works good with our finances. So we are looking to move forward with that, and we have put that ball in play, kind of. We were hoping that we were going to stay fairly close to what we had budgeted before this kind of came up on us. We ended up, if you look at the report from our program supervisor, it did come in over budget. It came in $2,590 over budget. And that's simply, we need to keep Max Galaxy for 2 months so that we can transfer everything over. And those 2 months actually put us over. But going forward with that is we're $880 less in our annual subscription with going with Perfect Mind. So in 3 years, we'll cover that loss that we just had right now. So, and that is it for me. Are there any questions?
Questions or comments? Councillor Seed first, then Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor Tolachuk. Just a real quick question with regards to in your report. Paul, you had mentioned about the residents that have the fence between the school and their properties and the students removing the caps off the tops of those fences. It does say here that the staff has purchased new caps. Does that mean the staff for the city?
Yes.
Okay,
nope.
So yes, it is the city?
It is the city, yeah.
Okay, do you know ballpark how much those caps are costing us, or is it considered to be our responsibility just because it backs a park?
It does, yeah.
Okay.
We have asked, yeah, I know what you're getting at, but we have asked the school to supervise their children a little more frequently during recess and lunch hours. It's happening more towards the traditions end of the school. And it's happening on a section of about 2.5 sections. So it's just, you know, once one kid pulls one off, it's look what I got kind of thing, right? So, and it just keeps going. So we've talked to the principals to watch that and ask them to put a stop to that, and we'll glue them back in. And I haven't got the invoice for that, Councillor C.
Okay, I'm just curious as to what the cost is there and how it's our liability for the fence that backs a private property, but I'm sure you'll do your due diligence on it, so thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor Philipchuk. I'm just wondering about the your new computer program. And there was a couple things on there. One, it didn't have that dressing room tab. Is that something that you are needing, or are you looking to accommodate? Will that be an additional charge? Or what are other facilities? You said that most facilities are using it. So what are they doing to accommodate that for dressing room?
You can actually put that dressing room number right in the title under the name.
Okay.
So if it was Warman versus Martinsville, you did Warman #3, Martinsville #6. So there is a way around it, but they are working because that was a complaint from, we're not the only ones test driving the software. It's affecting 5 or 6 other communities. So we were on it with we were on the demo with Martinsville, Warman, Humboldt, I believe, and Meadow Lake. And we all asked the same question. So they're working diligently to try to change some of their software to accommodate that, but there are ways around that.
Okay, and then my next question was about the signage. So you said, like, will that be, they're working with you, or is that going to be an extra charge? And I wasn't sure, so excuse
Nope.
my ignorance, is what did you mean when you said signage is available, but not at our current level?
It's just the way the system is set up right now, because it's the signage on our TVs and stuff is 2 different systems, and
Okay.
they need to talk to each other. So it's we'll have to work with not so much Perfect Mind to make that work. We'll have to go back and work with OES to make that work.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Tooley.
Just had a quick question, just with one of the comments Paul made, just about the fencing with the caps, and just a comment around the gluing the caps in. And is that, Paul, in your opinion, is that something that's actually going to resolve that issue once they're all glued in place?
You know what? Technically, right now they're all glued in place. So
Okay,
I'm hoping that we'll fix this with speaking to both the schools about monitoring a little bit better, that it'll bring an end to it. So if not, we'll have to come up where, the school starts paying for some of the repairs.
Okay. Is it just a case of the glues giving way, or are they being pried off, or?
Well, they're just, I believe they're just getting pried off.
Okay.
The picture there is, there's a lady that lives in that home, that back, she watched them try to get it off. So I think it just, when it gets cold, it's easier for it to wiggle back and forth and snap that seal, and then they come out, right? So.
Just a comment, a picture, she would have taken a picture to either of the principals. I think they would have found out and the family would have taken responsibility for that. So and also the school knowing now, if teachers see those types of things in the building or around, they'll make sure they get them back too. So there's, I think the awareness will probably solve that. The only question I had too was about the nine weddings. It's not a movie, 9 weddings and a funeral, but it's the one thing I wanted to say is thank you for accommodating them, because some of them probably are cancellations from last year. So this could be 2 years in the works for some of them. And I'm glad we're not pulling the pin. I realize we need to do the greater good, but thanks for thinking that we need to accommodate them, maybe using our other facilities in whatever way. So that's excellent work that I think is sometimes gets forgotten, but for those families in that stress, that's probably a big relief for them. So Appreciate that. I think I saw somebody's hand there. Or Councillor Beck.
Thank you, Mayor Philipchuk. Paul, I do have a few questions, and I'm going to start off with the Recreation Advisory Committee. With this year, from the minutes, it looks like there was some roundtable discussion points that were brought up. The first one there was, let's say, funding concerns with casinos not being open. So I take it that this is for the, let's say, for the grant funding. Have you heard of any decrease in funding that that's going to be taking place with that program?
Not right now. It's going to lag, right? So you're going to have 1-2 years before you're going to really see that come forward. But it is a reality, right? A lot of the funding comes from lotteries and casino operations. And so if the casinos aren't open, you're going to see a decrease at some point in time. This year going forward, we've already applied for the SAS Lotteries grant and we've been approved for what we've applied for. So we're not going to see it this year, but you may see it next year and the year after that.
Okay. Thank you for that. Also, with this year, there was some comments about more trees at the disc golf course after the holes have been relocated and whatnot. Is that anything that your department is contemplating at this time?
Not at this time. We've been out. We moved hole number 1. The holes we moved away from fence lines and move them further deeper into the park away so that we weren't causing issues with our residents that back against both those parks. So we did move them over. Really the only one that we could potentially add more trees to is hole number 1. Holes number 2 and number 3 both run parallel or around, I guess, the toboggan hill. And to plant more trees in there, you're looking at liability of little kids coming down off the toboggan hill and running into a tree for a quick stop. So it's not potential to do that. Looking back at hole number 1, it already has 4 trees that we've planted and we worked into place. So I think we're going to hold off and wait and see what the growth of those trees does. And if it becomes that it's too easy of a hole, then maybe we will plant 1 or 2 trees. Might be something that we're interested in if somebody gives us a donation of a tree and we need to replant it. That's the way we're going to go. But I think for now, we're not going to plant new trees right now.
Okay, thank you. And then also there was a comment about rental of cross-country ski equipment. Is that going to be anything that you're going to be looking to get into, or just leave that for for people to figure out?
We have SAS Sport usually is a real good supporter on some of that stuff, and the reason that question came up is because of what Martinsville was doing with some of their rental program. They went out and bought some fishing gear that they rented out for their ponds and stuff for their family days. But they also rented out some cross-country skis. Well, you can't find cross-country skis because SAS Sports isn't really open right now and moving forward. They went out and they touched base. Their new person over there that's got a mat leave is right out of SIAS. And she had connections with SIAS, and that's where they got the cross-country skis from. So we're still looking at doing a snowshoe program here if we have snow still over Easter. But for us to buy and have an inventory of cross-country skis and boots and stuff, I don't think it's something that we're entertaining at this point in time.
Yeah, and certainly, like I guess one of my concerns on that would have been, let's say, storage. I know that storage at, let's say, at our facilities is certainly at a premium right now, and like there again, like this would certainly be like an added storage facility for that, or you'd have to have something, let's say, off-site, which would certainly come with quite a bit of inherent risk to it. So, so I guess that's why I was wondering, just kind of touching base on some of those items there. So, yeah. So thank you for that. Now going on to your Appendix E, the levy rental rate schedule. Certainly this year we see some, say steady increases in there. It's certainly necessary, I think, with things going forward to to certainly plan for that. Let me ask, with the rate increases that are there, I'm like, is this a schedule that that you support, knowing some of the financial pressures that you see coming on? And I guess I'll refer back to let's say one of the capital items there for the Legend Center being tables, chairs, and things like that. I think that was a $75,000 budget budgetary item. Just wondering if let's say like any recapture through rentals is certainly noted through the levy schedule, and how comfortable you are with the rates and the schedule as presented.
Well, the rates aren't a make money venture. Like I said, these increases basically are set to offset increases in operational costs, basically. Wage increase, Sask Energy, water, Sask Power, anything like that, extra cleaning, things like that we've done. So is it set to offset big purchases? No. Like, we're still looking at, just to be out there, we still look at just over $100,000, $125,000 loss at the Legend Center every year. So we're only doing it, and I shouldn't say only because that's fairly high, but we're still doing an 80 to 90% cost recovery. So we're still losing $110,000, $120,000 at the Legend Center per year. The Diamond Arena is a 70 to 80% cost recovery. We're still losing anywhere between $40,000 and $50,000 a year at the Diamond. Brian King Center is a 50 to 60% cost recovery. We're still losing somewhere in the $40,000 to $50,000 range at the Brian King Center. And then Parks is a 10 to 20. So, and we're losing somewhere in there, $300 and some $1,000 is what we're losing in the parks. So we're not putting cash away based on our rentals and our levies for purchases later on, or recoveries that way. We don't rent out our tables and chairs because you're dealing with a quicker turnover in a table and chairs if you're renting them out, just as your example. So are we making cash to put away? No, we're not.
All right, thank you very much for that. One last question, and this is regarding the library. This year it was noted in the minutes there that that Wheatland or that there's a little bit of an issue with the library hosting let's say activities outside of the library. Is that a restriction that's kind of come in place from Wheatland, or is that something to do with recreation and the Legend Center on that?
No, we're willing to work with the library to host events outside and in. Wheatland is really the roadblock there. They're stopping. They don't want any in-person. Even if they're in our facility, they don't. They want library programming to be in the library.
Okay. Is that going to be something that's going to, let's say, just brought in only because of like the COVID situation? Like, is that going to be relaxed in the future?
No, they've actually. We've been trying to get some more library programming happening and filling the spaces we have here. But the Wheatland really wants none of that to happen outside of the library. Even when we were in regular operations prior to COVID, they still had concerns about it happening in our facility.
Yeah. Well, and certainly this year, like one of the placements as to why the library is where it is like with let's say with the proximity to the Legend Center, and also with the use of the theater space there, right? So, and this year, I know that previous programming has happened there, so it would certainly be unfortunate if that kind of thing was threatened, certainly going forward. So. Certainly this year, like the library is kind of been like that whole, let's say warehouse for all of those, let's say outreach programs. It'd be nicer to use more than just that library space for some of those things. So I don't know, like hopefully, I don't know if you can, help massage this through that, the whole, thought process behind where it is in our community. Certainly revolves around it being front and center for some of those activities. Because like there again, even when you look at the, at the levy fee that Warman pays Wheatland, which then gets returned to our, to the library board, like there's certainly like a large pool of funds there that is waiting for activities, to turn around and do. And it really puts some constraints on what could be done there. And I've certainly over the years seen that money build without really any opportunity for the library to actually utilize those funds within our community. So I don't know. I don't know if there's anything along that line that you can pursue with Wheatland to show our interest in to certainly having activities take place, let's say offsite, but that would certainly be important going forward.
So just to be clear, the theater they consider on site because you're just a door in and out. It's going all the way through the Legend Center over to the multi-purpose rooms is what they don't want to do. They want to feature the library and have the programs happen right in the library or in the rooms that are adjacent or are connected to the library. So.
Okay, well like there again, still unfortunate if if the library can't actually sponsor events, let's say offsite. So anyways, I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Okay,
thank you for those comments, Richard. I'm hearing what you're saying, and it's maybe something we need to look in more. We can have at least a little bit more clarification on our needs and our particular situation for sure. So thanks for that. We'll leave it to Councillor Tooley to follow up on that as the library representative. Other questions? Councillor Johnson had her hand up. You're good? Okay. Anyone else? Thank you, Paul.
one last thing. I just want to put the word out there that Rochelle Beckatla is returning to work. She has been off for almost 2 years battling an illness, and she's returning to our team. And Kyle Thiessen started today. It's his first day with our department, and so he's just getting his feet wet. So if you see him, say hi.
Thank you for that. Okay, we're moving into the break. I think it's been 2 hours, so I think we will take our break, and we will do 10 minutes again. So I've got 2:56. And so we will be back at 3:06. Okay, 2-minute warning for everyone, 2 minutes or less. We're going to actually go to the RCMP report as our next one, just to give everybody a heads up. I know Staff Sergeant Thomas is on the line, and then we'll get back to you, Russ. So less than a minute here, and we'll call it back to order. Everything back to order. Okay, I've got 3:06, so we'll call the meeting back to order, and we will move down to protection. We are going to move, we'll go with Staff Sergeant Thomas with the RCMP report.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I forwarded the copy of the report. You should all have it in front of you. So the statistics are for the month of February. And so like I say, I arrived here February 15th. So it's the last 2 months. So as you can see, total calls for service for the month were 117. And as per Councillor Seed's request, this is just the city of Warman. It's no outskirts, no rural area, no RM McCormick Park. This is just the stats for Warman. So fairly quiet month compared to the same point last year. Was pretty much the same numbers, more or less. So it really didn't change from year to year. Of specific interest, you'll notice that there was a couple of calls of a robbery or threats, but due to investigation, 2 of them were unfounded. I'd like to bring your attention to the impaired driving for the month within the city limits of Warman. As you can see, there were 10 reported incidents and 7 people were charged with impaired driving. I mentioned that in the final page there. The last day of the month there, we had a call of a home invasion, and I know I reached out to our mayor and explained that this was an isolated incident, which means that there was an ulterior motive. It wasn't a random house that the people targeted. There was a reason why they went to that house, and of course, that is under investigation still, with very little cooperation from our victims. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Any questions?
First, start by thanking you for getting the report in this format and highlighting some of the incidents along the way. And we'll open it up to questions or comments. Councillor Seed.
Thank you, Mayor Filchuk. Yeah, Staff Sergeant Thomas, thank you very much for your report. I really appreciate being able to see what's happening within the city of Warman. I think that it's, unless other councillors feel otherwise, I really like seeing this report in its context now. 7 impaired drivers seems really high to me. Is this an ongoing concern or something? And I understand you've only been in the seat, so to speak, for about a month. Is this something that you think warrants further attention from the RCMP as far as targeting specifically impaired drivers due to what seems to be a high number?
I think the fact that you see the number is because there's specific targeting going on. And one of the reasons is due to COVID, the liquor establishments aren't open till 2, 3 in the morning. So we find that if people are drinking, they're doing it between supper and 10 o'clock at night, and then last calls between 10 and 11, and that's when it's occurring. So if I was to give an exact reason for that, those numbers, I would have to put it more that way. And the fact of we also got the help of traffic services that come through the area, as well as Corman Park kind of whips through every once in a while as well. So the fact that we got 3 different agencies or 3 different departments that are on the lookout and making the stops also adds to the numbers.
Okay, and are your officers, because we, as before it's been presented to council, that dealing with an impaired driver is obviously a huge tax on the resources available at that time. Are your officers, or do you feel that they're able to sufficiently keep up with this and still provide adequate coverage for the city of Warman during an impaired investigation?
Oh, for sure, because it's not tying, like I don't only have 2 members working for them. You know, I'll have 5, and obviously in the weekends we have close to 10 to 12. So the fact is a tax on the resources, I would say no. On a standard impaired, you do the 2 tests, and if there's no lodging required, it can be done within an hour, depending on length of phone call to lawyers and the service of documents and the severity of the intoxication. But for the most part, you can bang out from start to finish of an impaired for well within an hour to 15 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you very much, Staff Sergeant Thomas, and we'll see you next month.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm glad you guys like the report, and if you have any tweaking or any suggestions, feel free to let me know. Have a good day. Oh, by the way, I bought a house, so I will be a taxpayer in Warman on May 3rd. So,
excellent. That is great news.
Okay, take care. Bye.
I hope we all get an invite to the open house.
We'll move down to Fire Chief Austin. Or up to, I guess.
Down to, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I just see the spreadsheet. So good afternoon, Mayor Felicek, members council. My report's fairly short this go around. I'll just kind of go through it from top to bottom. The February is very busy for us for calls statistically. So it's the busiest February we've had since we've tracked numbers, with 46 emergency calls and 39 of those being medical responses. Now, 25 of those 39 were for people over age 60, which is substantial. And we did see, although we didn't have any positive COVID calls where we knew it was COVID coming in the front door, we did have a large number of unwell patients, especially seniors, whether it's the flu or COVID-19, yet to be determined. But that was the nature of our calls this month. So our members continue soldiering on and attending all calls day and night. And I think even though times are tough, our community is still very well protected. You have the statistics in front of me. Maybe I'll just pause if there's any questions statistics wise.
Okay, for any of the statistics, any questions or comments for Chief Austin? Seeing none, you can move on. Oh, just wait. Councillor Seat.
So just a quick question, Chief Austin. Is it possible when you're giving us the statistics on calls and such, could you include, or is it realistic, I should say, to include a line item that would show how many of those calls resulted in a medical transfer?
Yeah, I can pull it. I can tell you just as a nice round number. 99% of them will be Mediview will transport into the city. Okay. It's very rare to refuse, but I can actually add it, and that's a good idea. I'll add that as a line item in all of my reports, just saying how many refuse transport.
I think it just may help us going forward with our ongoing ambulatory concerns.
Agree. Yeah, I think it'd be a good number. I can do that.
Okay. Other questions or comments about the stats? Okay, Chief Austin.
Yeah, so our new water tender is in service. Thanks to Mayor Philchuck and Councillor Seaton Ramage for making it there, and City Manager Smith. I think we got a pretty good asset there to be used inside the community and the city limits of Warman and outside. And really thanks to all council for making that a reality. Right now, our 1978 truck is actually up for auction right now and exceeding expectations. It's we thought we'd get about 3,500 for it, which is what we paid for it. And I think the bidding, there's some agricultural companies that are fighting over it. I think there's been 28 bids and it's at $5,100 ending at the end of the month. So you take care of your stuff and people want it, I guess. So that's a good thing. Tying into that, I do owe Mayor and Council an apology, especially for Councillors Ramage and Seed. I know you reached out on the weekend, had some questions about this report. I realized I left it in my committee of the whole report in my second paragraph there about the extended review. I know we discussed it, and with your worship, we were talking about replacement costs and stuff at the commissioning on Thursday. And I made the mistake. I thought that report was for committee of the whole, not for future planning and strategic planning. So I didn't mean to create any kind of controversy there. I will affirm what Finance Manager Hebert said is the 10-year plan as it exists does work for our needs, just so everybody is 100% clear on that. So I didn't want the air to not be clear on that one. That's just me speaking a little bit prematurely about a report. So I apologize. On another front, we did wrap up our free AED program where we had Warman businesses apply. I think we had a dozen or so businesses apply for a free AED for their place of business. Our committee chose Not a Gym, which is, they're very excited to win it. They are right across the street from the skate park, BMX track. And another one of the biggest ideas, or one of the most positive things, was having an AED on that side of the train tracks if something goes wrong and we're trapped by a train on this side with all of our equipment. Our members who live, we have 3 members who live within 40 seconds of that location, so they can quickly grab that and run out and do what they need to do. So we have most of our training completed with staff. I thought it was done. They have 3 part-time staff that were interested in training. Our last training was right after a yoga class, so they called it Extreme Shavasana, whatever that is. But they're happy to take the training, and it's up and running, and we'll be ready to go. And our last but not least, our F350 has been ordered. We're getting pricing back for service decks, light, siren, and our graphics and that kind of thing. And we're hopeful that by summertime, with the way the snow is melting here, we might need another vehicle. So hopefully it's here sooner than later. And I welcome any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? I just wanted to say it was great to be at the tendering the truck, seeing the new equipment and seeing what all can provide for the city of Warman. Also hearing that you're making a profit on your last purchase. I'm not sure if inflation will cause this one to be the same way, but we'll see, I guess. And the other thing we always talk about is that you're feeling comfortable with the capacity we have all the time, that our needs in Warman are being taken care of. And that's something I know all of us as elected officials want to make sure that our community is taken care of. And I ask that question frequently because I know there's pressure points along the way, but appreciate all you do.
Yeah, for sure.
Councillor C.
Just 2 really quick questions for you, Chief Austin. One, I had been reached out to by a citizen regarding some of the first responder mental health awareness by Chris Stansfield. And I wanted to ensure that he had actually been in contact with you regarding his Challenge Coin initiative. And then secondly, I just wanted to check to make sure that your members, again, through the COVID pandemic here, there's been a lot of stress on your guys' resources. And I just wanted to, I know we check in on it frequently, but it's extremely important to myself, and I believe to council as well, just to, get a general feel for how the crew is doing, and yourself as well. Are you, the debriefings are going good and the crew is able to keep up and still doing well from a mental health standpoint?
Yeah, great question. I appreciate you that you asked it. Yeah, mental health is especially in our line of business. Well, every business nowadays with COVID fatigue and things like that, it can be tough on everybody mentally. We do have the mental health services that we can access just through a 1-800 number if anybody needs someone to talk to. We do peer-to-peer. As far as Chris's initiative, as far as the challenge coins. I won't get into it over this meeting, but it will be something that I'll put on my next committee of the whole report. One of those things that we have jumped wholeheartedly into. It's a great mental health initiative, and I sit on the board of directors for the Saskatchewan Critical Incident Stress Management team. So I'm on their director board, and we're looking at actually doing a partnership with that organization. I'll let the cat out of the bag a little bit here. Some of our members are working with Health Canada and a couple of universities, and we're beta testing a mental health app for first responders where they can access some of the tools they need, look at where they are on the stress continuum and realizing that, some self-awareness and things like that. It's very excited that we have people selected to be on that beta test. And Health Canada is planning to roll that out to police, fire, EMS, and military across the country free of charge as another tool in the toolbox for mental health. So mental health is a very important thing to our business for sure. So I appreciate your asking, and times are definitely tough, but we're managing. And if anybody needs resources past the peer level, we definitely provide those. So we're taken care of there for sure. Thanks.
Other questions or comments? And it's great to hear that proactive approach with dealing with that for sure. Because I think it's the reactive that always causes a bit of a challenge with that, but the more you can be proactive and people are feeling like they're supported all the way through, that's going to do great things for our team. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Austin. We will move down to EMO. Adrian. Is Adrian on the line or?
No, he's actually in training today, so he's provided his report. If there's any questions, I can certainly get back to him on that.
Okay. If there's any questions, we'll pass on the recording to him. You can watch our meeting. Any questions? Again, looks like some great work happening there, so appreciate that. And he's finding and staying on top of the training too, which is always good in this area. Okay, we will move on if there's no questions that we want City Manager Smith to deal with there. So we will move down to economic development. I'm guessing Manager Gasmo, you've been probably waiting for a while here. Probably the most nervous one the whole meeting here when you have your moment here. So
yeah. Thanks, Mayor, Council. I'm glad we can have someone in this role to maybe just provide a bit of insight to what's happening in this department. And I appreciate just everyone here at City Hall here, City Manager Smith and Planning Development Manager Toth, just to oversee this for the last little while. But yeah, I kind of tried to sum up in the last 5 weeks, just kind of getting my feet wet in the role and seeing where things are at within the city and just within the SRETA and the chamber. So I touched on a few things that I'll just kind of maybe go in an overview, and then if there's anything that you guys want to delve into more, we can approach at the end. So obviously with Mayor Filipchuk, be sitting in on a lot of the SRETA regional meetings, and I did my first one on the 16th of February. And there was a lot that came out of that meeting, but one of the things that was just good to hear, just the resiliency within people, but our businesses, and Laserology actually was awarded the SRETA SOAR program $5,000, and just kind of following up with her that she'll be able to actually do a lot more marketing and be able to hire some part-time staff, which is you always love to hear that kind of spin off from those grants. And then speaking of grants as well, prior to me starting, City Manager Smith and Planning Manager Toth were able to apply for the SRETA Revitalization Grant. And I think it was 2 weeks ago now, we got word that we were on the receiving end of $7,500 for a retail market analysis, which is obviously very exciting for the city, and that's kind of my major thing on my desk right now, as far as be putting out requests for proposals here shortly. City Manager Smith and myself are just kind of going to go over and exactly what we were looking at, but we want to get obviously the retail market analysis done on just the direction of the city, and just kind of maybe what we're missing out here. I know some things can be easy to noticeable to the eye, but doing a good study of what's here and what's lacking here, I guess. Another thing, I'm trying to be a sponge within the committee, is that obviously the city, economic development wise, finds obviously very important. So like I said, with Mayor Filipchuk and myself, I'll be attending all the SRETA meetings, trying to get in and introduce myself with CETA, as well as the Prairie Sky Chamber. Right now, Jamie and I are meeting twice a week, but once one-on-one, and the other time as a business task force, just to kind of what's going on within our surrounding communities, as well as obviously Warman. Another thing that I was able to touch on, I guess in the past couple weeks here, is just preparing for WOBE. I know that typically the spring is when we start campaigning harder for that. But I think with COVID and just the resiliency of humans, we are starting to try and get the ducks in a row, as far as it's important to kind of see where people are at. I mean, we can talk about vaccine rollouts, and that's obviously an exciting thing, but also events. I'm trying to get a gauge of where people are at that way too. And overall, I think I've received about 40 survey responses back, and it's all been very, very positive, in the sense of, 75% or higher are looking to attend an event like this. Obviously, we're looking to keep the same dates with after Thanksgiving weekend. Another thing that I started, kind of hopped in on with Sherry and Darla, the City of Warman guides, everything, all the articles are in. So Darla is currently working on that. We should have our first proof on the 24th, with the guides hopefully to go out middle of April. So those are always an exciting thing to have going forward. Like I said, networking, I'm trying to do the best I can to touch in on any committees, as well as just reaching out to fellow colleagues in the different municipalities, as well as just, what their economic development roles look like, and just kind of, I'm sure with council and mayor here, we'll kind of see where the direction you'd like to see the city go as well on April 8th with a strat plan. The one thing that's kind of been, I guess, a prevalent every day across my desk, and it's obviously a part of my role, but within the business community, is the SINP program. And I'll give you a little back story on that. Is City Manager Smith and myself have actually went to the provincial level just to sit down with Stuart Lowe, I guess, virtually. But we just got to bounce some questions off him. And in the business community, it's been quite a negative, I guess, program just from a local standpoint, as far as, it could be a, strip mall or development where, you could have two local businesses with 4 SINP clients, and they're never open at the proper time. So regular concerns have been store hour etiquette, and then just kind of like no outside hiring of residents. And then language has been a big thing. So I guess the government has a point system where they kind of rank based on your investment, age, education, stuff like that. But we don't really know that they're coming until the business license comes across our desk. So what we have just preliminarily talked about, but I want to keep council in the know of, is looking at a more of a municipality or a Warman point system. I know we don't want to pick winners and losers, but just having a more robust system, as far as, having a certain amount of language requirement, because I want our business communities to thrive, but I also and that's my main focus. But as well, I mean, if entrepreneurs can't speak the language, because what we were finding is, just from the provincial level, is they're not accepting any new applicants right now during to COVID. But one thing we're finding is the Saskatchewan government is kind of just, they want the investment, and they're not making the requirements as high as other places, because the resources aren't there maybe for, like they said in BC and Vancouver, they see an influx because of Chinatown and things like that, where they have the resources on a higher scale, where they have full-on communities that can house those things. So what we're finding is they want to get people in here, but I'm looking at the long term of Warman. In 10 years, I don't want all our SIMP clients to just move on to Vancouver, because they'll come and do their 2 years here if they need, and they'll still move on once they've gained entry. So that's something I think that's been at the highest part of my radar, and City Manager Smith has made it evident that that's kind of what's kind of been going on within the business community, and just touching base with some of them. So that's of high importance, and I'm sure we'll touch base on this once I've gone through my report, just because obviously this has could have damaging effects if something isn't done. And I think now is the perfect time with COVID, because if they're not accepting new applicants, this is something we can really make a better program. I think there's the ideas there, but I just think that there needs to be more of I guess guidelines just to make it a more robust program. So kind of touching back to Manager Toth's report, obviously Shoppers Drug Mart construction with land preparation has started, and then just going back to obviously Councillor Seed's point brought forward, I definitely will put that across my radar as far as signage from the developer, and I'll take that and take that into consideration, obviously, from the developer. But obviously, you know, despite the pandemic, we're seeing, like Brad said, we're seeing a huge growth in commercial building permits. Obviously, at 1.7 million above where we were this time last year. And then we're also seeing a growth of about 800,000 last year in single and multi-dwelling family permits, or dwelling permits, and then just about 100,000 growth for any other permits year to year. So I think that's encouraging to my thoughts, and just where things are at, and just kind of a few points looking ahead of just kind of what I had. Obviously, there's more to add to the list, just on a day-to-day, and maybe whatever council might have. But I obviously plan to continue meetings with the chamber, stay close connected there, and they're a huge resource. Continue to, I'm looking forward to the day when I can maybe on a more, I guess, comfort level, be able to go to businesses regularly and meet face to face. Obviously, I'm doing my best to try and introduce myself and see if what their comfort level is. The next treated regional meeting will be Tuesday, April 20th. So I look forward to attending that. Like I said, that point system, going back to the SIMP problem, just kind of that's something that City Manager Smith and myself will sit down with, and obviously that would come to a council before anything is put forth, but just something that we would look into. And then obviously just kind of been going through the files and just making this role mine, but just trying to update documents with current data for the use of promotion for our city. I know some of that is just behind and outdated, and I know that's important to have up-to-date stuff. In my second week here, I was able to, alongside, you probably saw the mayor, was for the grand opening of our second Tim Hortons. So I was able to stop by there and just introduce myself. And then I guess I'll just leave you with, just in my talks with the business community outside of the SIMP, there's just been a lot of positivity as far as, seeing light at the end of the tunnel. Now, I know I have to say that lightly, because I know there's a lot of people that have still been hit hard by the pandemic, and we've all been hit in different ways. But it has been a lot more positive conversations the last few weeks. And I think obviously that has a lot to do with vaccines, but that's why I guess we do what we do, right? Is to see that, and to hear the resiliency of how every business is pivoted. And that's maybe what I'll leave you with, is currently just working with the chamber, as well as with the cities, just on what it might look like for the business summit, to just explore some of those stories of just how people have pivoted. I don't think that's celebrated enough. I think the resiliency of people within our community is just, it's remarkable, really. And that's just a theme that I think we hear about lots, but that's kind of just what I had for now. And look forward to hearing any comments or concerns.
Okay, any questions or comments? Councillor Johnson.
Welcome, Brennan. Just wanted to say that first and foremost. I see you went to Brandon, so woohoo, go Bobcats. So I was just thinking about a talk we had at the municipalities of Saskatchewan with Kendall Netmaker, and I'm wondering about any interest as far as Indigenous businesses coming into our community as well. Is there any prospect with that, or are we exploring that more just to be more of an inclusive community?
I guess there's nothing concrete that, you know, I've definitely put together yet, but obviously that's something that is close to, I think, you know, my heart, and want to make sure that, you know, we're a community that's inclusive in all ways. And that's definitely someone that I was planning to reach out to. I know I have him on LinkedIn, and just, you know, just, yeah, always want to bounce ideas and just see how we can grow as a community in all aspects, not only just in growth, but just in yeah, just the vibe of the inclusivity that we can provide. And I think just like Councillor Ramage said earlier, like this community is something special, and I see such potential with it, you know, grow. So to answer your point, of course, like that's something, there's nothing, I don't have anything put forth together yet as far as like what that might look like, but that's definitely something, Councillor Johnson, that I can put on my radar as well to really start diving into a little bit more.
Thank you. Councillor Ramage, and then Beck.
Thank you, Mayor Philipchuk, and welcome, Brendan. I spent a little bit of time in Brandon as well, but I think we both found our way back to the best city. Really good first report, and you touched on a number of things that I like to hear about. But I wanted to ask you a little bit about the SINP program. And so one of the challenges is obviously it's a provincial program where, as you mentioned, we don't find out about anyone coming to our community until that comes across your desk. And I think from my perspective, and I think this is shared as well, is we want people to invest in our city. We want people to come here and set up a business, and we want them to be successful. And so I think that's what I'm hearing through developing this point system. Mm-hmm. But I guess my question is, how does that fit into the overall provincial approach? Is this something that the province would accept, that Warman would have a point system on its own? Or have we also looked at, with our proximity to Saskatoon, should we be considered within the urban requirements?
For sure. Yeah, that's a great question. And so I guess it is a provincial, obviously, program. So that's why we just, you know, City Manager Smith would know as well. We can't just, I guess, do our own program or not. So I guess I should have put that in my report, but I guess the initial stages will be, we're actually writing a letter with the Chamber as well as Martinsville, because I think one of the things is the numbers are staggering. The two highest communities per capita, I believe Moose Jaw would be one, but Warman is it's insane how much Warman. I think we have had 45, and the city of Saskatoon has had like 200. But if you look at the city population difference per capita, we are, and I know that, you know, we offer things that obviously attract the community. So that would be obviously one of those things where I guess this program would have to, I guess, like go through, it'd be ours. But what we're initially trying to do is the government has said they're going to make change to this program. And right now they're looking at a higher language requirement, which that alone would fix a lot of issues, I find. But the other one that they're looking, or I think we've brought forth, is just the, like, I guess ours would be, could there be a requirement for, you know, do they live in the community they're applying for? Because if they don't, I think that would be not a positive, but like a negative in a sense of like points, like not saying that they can't open in Warman if they live in Saskatoon. But I think someone that pays their taxes here, obviously that's a higher priority. If they're hiring local residents, and then the store hours would be another thing. Is I know you can't, I guess, say, you know, because there's different religions and days of rest for different people, and as far as open, but at the same time there needs to be some sort of store hour etiquette. So those things, I guess, Councillor Ramage, before we want to put together a letter that will put that together to the provincial government, who I guess would be directed to Stuart Lowe, who he would take that to his boss, which he's a part of the person that created the program, the SINP program. So that would be kind of, I guess, first steps, because, yeah, unfortunately, I mean, we could do something, but by the time they're already set up, have a business license. And I guess Sherry at City Hall here, she has done an amazing job. She's trying to look at that. But like you said, you you can't, just because it might be a foreign name, be like, well, nope, can't SIMP client. And that's the tough thing we're up against, where, you know, I tried to get that list of the breakdown. And once I do, I think I'll bring that to my the next committee of the whole meeting, is because I want people to be able to see the businesses that have opened and the ones that, you know, have applied and maybe opened but haven't opened, because we're trying to get that number and not need the names, but we need the names of the businesses, because I don't even know the difference between the SIMP and not, as far as certain businesses. Obviously, there's certain ones we know are SIMP clients, but we had 45, and that shocked me that we have 45 in this community. You know, so we're trying to get those numbers. We're trying to work that way. And in our letter, we want to kind of include some points that we would like to, if it wasn't a provincial program, we would like to implement. Maybe City Manager Smith can speak to this, but the goal is to, in the next few weeks, have a letter drafted up to Stuart, who knows that the letter is coming from us jointly. And I think Warman's been affected the most by it. So Martinsville's kind of like just wants to be attached on it, but it would be definitely drafted up by myself, City Manager Smith, and then Jamie from the chamber going forward, just because I think this is a problem, like you said, that is just echoed in the community. And I think language alone going up would be a higher requirement, would be huge, because the problem we're finding, and so we found out too that they are sending people out in check up on these businesses. But I also was requiring, like, well, could you let, you know, myself or someone at City Hall knowing that you're going to do a checkup, just so that we can know. I don't want my job to be knocking on doors to always see if people are open, but I do want to have a close connection with the business communities to know the business owners and just make sure businesses are. But the calls I'll get regarding, you know, 3 businesses in their strip mall or the plaza won't be open, and it's frustrating, because for their standpoint, you know, you might want to do a one-stop shop and you're not able to do so if those businesses aren't open. And then it creates well, I'm not going to go to that place. And then when you really start to have these campaigns that support local, it makes it more difficult. And half the businesses in a certain part might not be open because, yeah, they're open to get into the requirement. And we're finding that, you know, then if people want to go to Vancouver or Toronto eventually, they're going to get there eventually. So we need to try and keep people here and I think if people want to live here, you know, hire local residents, like it ingrains them more in the community, and there's more economic spin-off.
Yeah,
so I
I think that's a very good answer there. And Jamie with the chamber, I know has done a lot of work on this and has a really good understanding of as well. So it's good to hear that partner, that collaboration is continuing. Just can you speak real quick to some of I know the chamber is leading initiatives to help the current business owners under this program, and that the city is in a support role to that. Can you speak real quickly to what's been done there and what the outcomes may have been?
Just with the chamber and the city and stuff?
With the workshops or the roundtables that have gone on with SNIP entrepreneurs.
Yeah, so I just kind of been caught up from Jamie on that, and I think she's worked tirelessly, and she actually had a call just a few weeks ago with more workshops, and she's been seeing progress with, I guess, getting the provincial government to want to change some guidelines, and then local businesses. We're trying to get that message out that, you know, I guess, unfortunately, we don't want to like just put it back, but we don't really, I guess, have a say in it. But we're trying to take their concerns forward, and that's kind of why we had these meetings, is because I've been seeing a tremendous amount, maybe now that we have an economic development officer, that businesses that are bringing these concerns. And so Jamie, honestly, up until I think in the last few weeks, she's been tirelessly working on the SIMP and trying to gather information, but honestly hasn't had a lot of success about getting through to them provincially. And I think the message is getting old in the business community, not that they're mad at Jamie or myself, but they're just frustrated at, I guess, the dynamic that this program brings. And obviously, I don't just want to be the person that, well, it's not our program, it's nothing we can do. Obviously, I want to try and explore all our options to make it better. And I think that's why COVID, Jamie and I see such a time now that, I mean, if you can't make changes to a program like this now to help our local business community, I mean, when are you going to make them? Because it's easier now when things are kind of shut down. So just with some of those roundtable discussions in the businesses, it's been a concern, but I think, like you said, I think there's been tireless work, and I think they see that. I mean, Jamie's been working on it quite a bit, and in the last 5 weeks, I've been trying to make it every priority to.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, and that's all really good news, and I think nothing but positive things can come out of it, because if we help our current businesses, we set up other ways for people to be successful. That just breeds further success in our business community. So I look forward to hearing about that, but also the strategic planning session and talking about some other initiatives. So thank you very much for your report.
Thanks, Councillor Ramage.
Councillor Beck, and then Councillor Peterson.
My question has been covered by Councillor Ramage. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson.
I just wanted to caution a little bit about too much talk about hours and requirement on hours, just because at one point I received a complaint about a business that was never open, and then found out later that as much as they didn't have their door unlocked, they're very much an active business, but they're just out selling direct to other businesses, and that's then their location was more for storage of their product than anything else. So I just want to caution that we don't always know how they're operating their business, and I don't think it's up to, I just want to caution about too much talk about hours and stuff like that.
For sure. Thanks, Councillor Peterson.
Thank you. Councillor Seed.
Yeah, Brendan, thanks for your report. Really well put together. I'm excited to hear your enthusiasm for what you're trying to do. As somebody that has been involved in private business for my entire career, I would echo a little bit of what Councillor Peterson just said, in the fact that, yeah, there's lots of concern and questions in our community about these businesses, and are they viable, are they not? Are they real, so to speak, or is it just a step to go through the nominee program? While I'm optimistic that the province is realizing there might be something to be tweaked there, I would just heed some caution as well about making any kind of public statements about when business should be open, what they're doing. It's a slippery slope, but I'm going to pull some verbiage out of Councillor Tooley's lines here, but that's getting pretty thick into the weeds, and I don't think we need to be there. It's independent businesses, irregardless of what their product is, has the right to set up wherever they can legally do so. And I don't think as a council or a city, it's our right to tell them that they can or can't do this, or they should be doing this, because ultimately we don't want to have any say in whether they're successful or otherwise. What I think may be beneficial, and it's something that I saw actually as a social media post that was quite inspiring, to be honest, was maybe putting together like a fact sheet for some of these new businesses. I remember they come from vastly different cultures and regions. And they quite often, I don't think that there's a lot of maliciousness there. I think a lot of times it's just a lack of understanding. I did see a lady post, and I don't know which business she owns, but basically explaining that she was new to the country, new to Warman in general, and wanted to offer free Mandarin lessons to anybody that was willing to come and learn her language as well. And I think that goes to show a good core of people that want to be involved in the community. But imagine, us moving to China and opening up a new business, if that's in fact where, and I'm only referring to this lady as an example, not knowing the language, not knowing the social culture, and really looking for some direction. So while I would encourage us to reach out to them and provide insight based on what local cultures and what local expectations are, I certainly think that we want to be very, very careful mitigating that they have to be open at a certain time, or that we request that they be open from 8 to 5 or whatever the case is, because it's really not our place to get involved in that too thickly. But overall, great report. I appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing what is going to come down the pipe, so to speak.
Awesome. Thanks, Councillor Seed. I appreciate that.
Other questions or comments? Councillor Tooley.
Just a really kind of a couple things that I thought of when Councillor Peterson actually was making his comments about some of the issues around hours that businesses are open. And I think one of the things that we might want to be a little bit, I guess, conscientious of is depending on And I know sometimes these businesses are going to be sort of an evolution, when they open, and they may find that the market that they are actually getting into might actually look different than what they were expecting. But sometimes it's going to be a matter of actually finding the right space for their business model. And so if it's if it's more of a business model where they're going to do like some direct selling, and they're utilizing their storefront as just a storage location, then maybe they need to be more in like an industrial type of, like a warehouse type of a location, as opposed to a storefront business in a retail strip mall. Because I mean, I think of something like, if we had, say, a shopping mall located in Warman, there'd be some expectations that would be on the tenants in that property, from the property owner, saying that the hours of operation for the mall are 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and it's an expectation that when you have that contract, you are open during those hours. And that's kind of how things go when it comes to some of those properties. So sometimes it's just a matter of having people in the right fit, and sort of that misconception that if it's a storefront business, people do expect that to be open, and they don't expect people to not be there. So I think we just want to be, maybe take that with a little bit of maybe Stephen, that's something that can give us a little bit of a direction, and something that can actually help us when we get some of the inquiries, is to have that be part of the checklist to find out what is the business model going to look like, and what are your space needs.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Tully.
Yep.
Councillor Peterson.
Just wanted to follow up a little bit on what Councillor Tully said, and that is, sometimes they might be aware of what their needs are and that, but it might be a matter of cost, because they might pay, yes, a little higher per square foot cost there, but it might be much smaller space. Whereas an industrial space, which we may view as more fitting to what their business model is, might be so much bigger than what they need, that they might be that their end cost in the month might be more. So it just doesn't fit their business model price wise. So I don't, we can provide them with ideas and hopefully, as far as working with their business model, but it's ultimately up to them where they locate.
Just a few of my comments. I think I want to, a lot of them have been covered throughout the different discussion. First of all, thanks for everybody for bringing this up, because I know during the election campaign, and then even talking to businesses, this is a topic that's come up, and I have a bit of a passion in this area too, because at the end of the day, as Councillor Ramage said, we are open for business, and we want these businesses to be successful. People are using their hard-earned money to invest in our community. I throw it back the other way. What are we doing for them? What are we doing to help them be successful? What are we doing to entice them to move to our communities and have their kids go to our schools and shop at the other stores? As I said, that'll be ultimately the measurement that we have done a great job when we see people from the SNIP program going into other stores in our community on a regular basis, and there's that interactive back and forth shopping local. I'm seeing a bit of that happen with some, and some have taken the brave stance, as Councillor Seed has mentioned, to tell their story. And when they're telling their story, there is more compassion. There is more, you know what, I'm going to go find out what this person's about, because they risk a lot to leave their country, to come here, to invest money, and then see what happens. So I think a lot of it has to be, what are our measurements? My measurement that I sort of said is, I want to see people that have come through this program using our businesses in another way and become residents of Warman and plant roots here in Warman. I said, that will be, we've got a lot to sell. We are a great community. As mentioned many times this meeting, that what do we have to offer to make sure that this is the best place in all of Canada? We've all chosen it, and we need to sell that to all the people that are on the line to maybe going to other cities, that maybe we can have people coming back our way, the other way. So just another side to it, but I think the one last thing I want to mention too is, I know that going around to different businesses right now, in the spirit of regulation, this is not the time that you can do that on a freelance way in the same way. I mean, we still need to be following regulations the best we can. If you need to go support a business, by all means, I've been discussing and visiting with people along the way, but I think we have to be cognizant we are in a global pandemic, and I respect that you have limited contacts at this point, reaching out by phone, but I'm glad you're taking this file on, because it is one of those ones that everything you create, other cities are going to be looking to us, what all happened there. But I think it's not an us and them, it's a we, and you know, I always think if somebody investing in our community has to really be respected to say, if they're, you know, if their thoughts and purpose are in the right way, that we want to do what we can to help them out. And there's some that just got wrong advice on the other end, that type of business would potentially work, because I can't see anybody wanting to just throw away money if there's a better way. Okay.
Thanks, Mayor.
Anything else with this one? And thanks again for this report. It's a and very well spoken. You did a great job, and very proud WHL or Warman High School students. So thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to communications. Aaron.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. You have my update in front of you. I've recently completed my quarterly Sask Alerts exercises, so I'm still qualified to issue a live alert if necessary. And I gave you a summary of some social media posts from February. So as always, if you ever have any suggestions or want to see more communication in a certain area, just let me know.
Any questions or comments? Councillor Beck. And Councillor Steve.
Thank you very much, Mayor Philipchuk. Aaron, just a question. We had posted the cancellation of the 2021 spring cleanup. And it looks like there was, let's say, some engagements there and whatnot. I'm just wondering, could you provide a summary? Like, are there any negative comments, or does our community feel somewhat supportive, or are they rather disappointed that it's not happening?
The comments were mostly disappointment. I think there are people who understand, but usually the disappointed people are more vocal. Unfortunately, like with the explanation, people are still feeling a little upset. So not really too sure how to elaborate more on that.
So like communication back to them, then let's say like as a city standpoint, like did we put the focus on COVID or budget, or like how was it communicated back to them?
It was, I wish I had it in front of me. It was a combination of budget and COVID, and emphasizing that council wants to be very fiscally responsible. So it's just a combination of all of that. And unfortunately, some people still take offense to the cancellation.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, fair enough. And then I guess just as a comment, I mean, obviously with this year, like we did get the notification there from Public Works about Amos looking to retire. Hopefully with this year you can work with Jason and be sure to to do some some social media, let's say certainly like around that, just because 20 years of service is certainly quite a bit of dedication to our organization, and also to all of the community. So yeah, like hopefully we can celebrate that in a very positive way. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Seat.
Thank you, Mayor Philipchuk. Yeah, overall, Aaron, thanks for your report. Everything looks good. As I'm sure you've seen, and I've discussed with Mayor Philipchuk on the side with this, is that several times I feel that when people are asking questions after an initial social media post by the city, you know, as obviously as both a resident and as a counselor, I want to make sure that they have accurate information. And I'm just wondering about what our kind of standing policy is on when people are asking for some information and follow up on these posts. It seems like there can be a significant amount of time before there's any response from us officially. And I found more as a, call it my own social media test, answering with just the factual information that's public knowledge that we're aware of, surprisingly actually has really seemed to stop the negativity that we can see spread on social media, because I think a lot of times it's based on either not blatantly false information, but misconceptions as to what the reasoning behind some of the events are. And I'll just use the spring cleanup as an example. Looking at it on social media, there's over 33 comments on it. Lots of questions, lots of back and forth. But really, unless I can see it, no follow-up officially from the city on it. And I'm just wondering if that's something that you feel is maybe less is more, or whether we might be able to step that up a little bit to provide some answers without getting into a back and forth engagement with some people that quite frankly are just there to troll.
Yes, so there was follow-up to that specific post. I did not engage with the rude comments. If council feels that like all comments should be dealt with, I don't mind doing that. I just feel like sometimes when people are upset, it doesn't matter what explanation you give them, they're right. So, and they're entitled to express their opinion that way. Was there another?
You're freezing a bit, Aaron. You have frozen. We'll just give Aaron a moment here. Yeah.
You want me to bounce in while she's coming back on? I think part of the probably the thing that we struggle with the most in responding to the questions is we may have a different response than what council may wish to have or wants on behalf of the community. So when you look at the, if you look at the existing policy that's in place, the communication policy, it is really says that, you know, not to respond to those types of comments and questions. You have already provided the information that, for instance, the spring cleanup's going to be canceled for these reasons. There's going to be feedback, you know, and I think you can, it's a double-edged sword. You can try to provide as much information, but usually it's posts after you've made a comment or you've already advised what the policy is going to be. So it's a cautious thing that we talk about all the time, that we would, you know, sometimes we would love to respond, but we also know that it's probably not prudent too, because you get into a debate. So that'd be my comments on it. It is a slippery slope, and what we try to do is provide the best information we can, and people will not accept it, or they'll accept it, or they'll provide information, and then that, you know, would give us direction to come back more to council for, do you want us to change our direction? Do you want us to, you know, have the spring cleanup and increase taxes more, or try to hire more summer students or whatever? We're willing to do that, but getting into the debate with somebody on social media doesn't really tend to square off a positive, I guess. So that'd just be my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So just to follow up, I hope overall, like, no, I'm not suggesting that there's any, it's not overly negative by any stretch of the imagination. Like, I think that we're doing a good job of communicating that. I think that, you know, short of running a plane over the city with a constant strolling message, you're always going to get people that are complaining they didn't see it or didn't hear it. And even then they probably would, or complain about the plane. But at the end of the day, I think we're doing good. I like the current policy. I've just found, like I said, I did it more of a social media experiment myself, was just providing that information seemed to really cancel or stop the debate. And I wasn't sure if that was something that we were interested in as a council, of potentially looking at that. But I'm happy leaving it as a status quo for now.
Anything else to add to that, Aaron, or you're?
Sorry about that. I got kicked out, so.
Yeah. Okay, and I think my only comment to that too is the only time I'll respond, if it's in a factual way, in any way, I'll respond that way. Or if they go on a tangent, I will private message them and at least let them know. And a lot of times open up my phone number and let's have a meeting. Come to City Hall, let's talk. Like if you're that passionate about some area, let's talk about it so I can share with council these different concerns. Because sometimes it's out there that it's not online of what even the conversation was. And those are the ones that sometimes I'll reach out to them to say, let's have a conversation, and I'll private message them so it doesn't become something goes off that's not even really tied to what the post was all even about. Any other questions or comments for Aaron, who's Catherine now? Okay, thank you very much. So as you can see, I guess any council comments or inquiries, I guess we added that in there if there's anything else. And just one, I want to mention that if anybody has questions that you're going to send to different managers, please CC myself and City Manager Smith, just to stay in the loop. We won't even answer. It's just to be in the loop of some of that, especially when we're talking some of the capital projects. Like if there's more clarification on a specific, by all means, reach out. If you have some of those in the past, we'll have a chance for people to hear about the different ones that are there. But if it's very much something you want to really know a lot about a specific, by all means, ask them. Just CC myself and City Manager Smith. It just keeps us into what is, if there's something that's coming out of that we can share with all of council at that point, we will do that, or if it needs to be with all of council at that point. As you can see, the next meeting, we're hoping will be in person. So will take place Monday, April 19th, depending on restrictions and time. Our goal is to hopefully in April go to in-person meetings. And some of that, we're almost using a little bit of some of the regulations that have been softened with churches and some of the gatherings that we will, that's our goal. We'll see if that happens or not, but April is our sort of intended goal right now. And that gives some time for our city clerk to plan for that and make sure we have facilities for that. We were probably looking at the Legend Center though, because if the BKC is being used for vaccines, which we definitely want to have happen in our community. Any other questions or comments before we go? Thanks for the great conversations here. I think that management has a lot to sort of take from this meeting and move forward with. Okay, nothing, a motion to adjourn. Councillor Tooley. Oh, you're not going to read it?
Forgot I had to read it. I'm going to make the motion to adjourn the March 15th, 2021 Committee of the Whole meeting.
Seconder. Councillor Ramage. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, everyone have a great day. Enjoy some of the sun. Try and get out and enjoy the great weather.